How are you?
Good, man. Good. It's a lovely, dreary, rainy day here. Perfect day to be speaking with Stuart.
Same, grey. We had like a summer for a couple of days this week, and it was like, oh, we still got people going, oh, it's too hot, it's too warm. Yeah. Now it's raining, grey and miserable. So
yeah.
People
are always happy to complain. That's for sure.
They are indeed. So do you miss podcasting? Obviously, you're on one now, but do you miss Bind Torture Kast? Will it come back?
Oh boy, no, I do not think Bind Torture Kast will come back unless it comes back in a different form, like with different people. I haven't really spoken too much with Luke since we stopped. We every once in a while we'll email one another. He has since moved even out of the state we both used to live in together when I was still in the United States. He's now moved down to Florida. And so it seems like I chat with him even less now, it seems. But, he's doing his writing thing, and I'm not sure how much he really gets into watching films as much anymore. Okay. But every once in a while we'll still reach out and just see how each other is doing and see what each other is kind of up to and that sort of thing. So,
has the way that you watched films changed since stopped doing the podcast? Or is it just the same? You just don't have an outlet as much to talk about it?
It's definitely changed in that I'm not like so note oriented anymore. Like when I was doing BTK, I would always like just keep notes on every little thing, that was of note to me. That way I would know to have something to talk about, talk about this particular thing on the show next week or whatever. And I found I was doing that with a lot of things, even horror news and trailers, and it became almost like a homework assignment. Yeah.
Yep.
And I realized it's not that I was enjoying films any less. It's that the act of actually experiencing them was less enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
I still loved movies. So I noticed when I stopped doing BTK, even the first, year and a half, maybe even 2 years, probably year and a half, I'd say, I was still doing that. I was still keeping a list of like my favorite films of the year, just because you never know, a podcast might come up and I might have to talk about this stuff. And it wasn't until maybe last year where I'm like, I could just kind of finally unplug entirely from that mindset. And it was nice because now I can just sort of enjoy films again without really thinking too much from the critical perspective. I mean, I still have my thoughts, my gripes, my loves, my dislikes, all that stuff about films. But now I just I can just sort of enjoy them and not have to think about what the conversation will be afterwards, right?
Yeah. Because you used to plan the episode. You would hear on an episode of BTK, you're like, so for July we're doing this, for August we're doing this, for September we're doing this. And it was so far ahead planning. I have no clue what movies we're going to talk about now. I never, because obviously the shows that I do are slightly different to yours. Yours were you would pick a film, review it, but also cover all the other stuff as well.
Yeah.
But your planning and your scheduling was always something to be admired, but something I went, I don't have the organizational skills to plan that far ahead.
It's partially wanting to deliver a sort of a professional sounding podcast. Not that there's anything wrong with unplanned ones, because I listen to plenty of those too. It was just sort of what I want to do, but the other part of it was also just sort of my mental illness, like as far as like everything needs to be like super planned out and like ahead of time. I'm not what some would call a spontaneous individual. Everything I do is very much at least for the most part, I like everything to be have a lot of thought before I actually do it. That's just me. That's how I am. I'm the guy that sets his clothes out the night before, so I know what I'm wearing the next day. All that dumb stuff. So, but BTK was a lot of fun, and I would not be against it coming back, even just as a once every month or two type thing. I think the way I was going for a while was just a bit just a little too much for me, and like you say, it kind of became like work.
Yeah.
It was something that, it's not that it was no longer fun. It was just, every night or every time I would go to record, I would just kind of be like, oh boy, here we go again. Like, here goes the next 3 hours of my life, and maybe it'll be a good show, maybe it won't be, I don't know. And then of course all the editing that comes afterwards, and all the music and all that stuff. It was a lot, and after a while, it just wasn't as much fun anymore. So
sometimes it's nice to go, what am I going to do tonight? Do you know what? I'm going to sit down and watch Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome rather than, well, I need to watch this film for this episode that I'm doing next week and take all the notes. And sometimes you go, you know what? It's a St. Elmo's Fire type night. I'll put that on, dig the disc off my shit, which I did the other week. So we're going to be chatting about physical media and stuff.
Absolutely.
In this conversation. How's the music coming along?
Pretty good. Honestly, when I put out the last record at the end of, I guess, October it was last year, I'm finding it's taking me longer to get started with each new record, because it's tough to explain. Like, every time I put out a record, I'm very pleased with it when I put it out. I have to be, or else I won't release it. And each record has a lot of things I do to it, like just in the last couple months when the record's done, that like really kind of elevate it to make it something I would want to listen to. So when I put out the record, I'm like, I can't do any better than this. This is the best that I have to offer right now. And then there's this sort of mental game that I go through where I'm like, well, why should I even bother doing another record? Because like I can't top what I just did. But then usually what happens, and it's happening now, is songs kind of start like sort of worming their way out of me in different ways. And I'm like, so I'd start recording little snippets here and there, little pieces of guitar. Oh, here's a neat choral arrangement, I could try that. And then before I know it, songs start to kind of take root. And then usually once I start in that cycle, the mood of the album is already taking shape, and then I'm fully in it. And then that's when I just sort of start locking myself in my little office studio every spare minute I get, and just recording as much as I can. And even when I'm upstairs and my wife's doing something, I have my MacBook and I'm doing edits and stuff on there. Like I'm just very in it for those few months while I'm really doing the active recording. So I took a few months, didn't really do anything, just played a lot of video games, watched a lot of movies, and then just recently completed a song for my wife Lydia, her podcast Dead Air. So they have a new sort of, she's like, can you do a small little intro for us? We've been using the same intro for many years. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And for me, going small is tough, because like I want to convey a mood sort of within a song. So, and as you know, listening to some of those records, like some of the songs can go on for a while.
See, I like that though, because that's rare. That's not really something I experience very often with like 11-minute tracks. But I get to spend time with the music you've done rather than, oh, this is amazing. Oh, it's finished. But like watching an Acolyte episode, you're like, oh, this is really good. Oh, it's done.
Yeah. So that was the challenge for me, was creating something small. And at the end of it, I kind of created these two distinct parts of the song, one for the intro, one for what I thought could be a good outro for their podcast. And it had a different feel because of the style of their podcast. They tend to do a lot more older horror films on their show. And I was like, well, I should do something maybe a little bit more retro sounding, but still, maintaining that Aenorex DNA. And it came out really cool, but I actually learned from doing it, like, this ended up being like I think a 5-minute or 5+, maybe between 5 and 6 minute song. And I'm like, actually, this should be my challenge for the new record. Try to go with some, and sorry to disappoint you, but try to go with some smaller but equally as impactful songs. That could be the challenge, because I like each record to have like some sort of challenge for me, whether it's playing or production or whatever. And I'm like, this could be something I could try to work with. Now, I've now said it, and it's going to go out on YouTube and everywhere else. We'll see what happens. Like, hopefully by the end of the year, when this album comes out and the songs are all like, 17 minutes long, we'll make a liar of myself.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's going well. Like, I have some really good ideas for this new record, and some cool things are starting to take shape. So
you've got a very creative household going there with Lydia with the Dead Air podcast and her book reviews and YouTubes and stuff. Yourself with the music, ex-host of Bind Torture Kast. I'm hoping there'll be 2 Bind, 2 Torture, 2 Cast will come out at some point. But
yeah,
that's going to be fun living in a creative.
It is. It's super cool. I couldn't ask for anything more in terms of my wife sort of being this really intelligent, really creative person who, besides doing this amazing podcast and her awesome YouTube channel, Typical Books, she's a writer, right? She writes horror novels, she writes horror stories. Like what else could I really ask for a guy like me? This is like the dream relationship. You grew up like no woman like that exists. It's like, yeah, she does. I had to move to Canada to be with her, but yeah, she exists. Well, so
Canada's normally nicest time of year. It's great at the minute, but hopefully it won't be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So your topic interested me. Your comment. I didn't reply to the comments on YouTube because obviously I'd emailed them like, let's do it as a podcast because it's a great chance to actually do this, and I didn't want to go into the conversation in YouTube and then go over the same stuff here. But physical media I love physical media.
Yeah.
It infuriates me a lot of people who are like, don't bother with it ever. You're like, how can you not bother with it? And it's just, it is dwindling. It's a shame. Don't know. I mean, you mentioned in the topic thing, where will it go? Where are we at? Type thing. Yeah. I can't see it getting any better as much as I would like it to. The same with cinema audiences, to be honest. I'm planning an episode about how to save cinema. In fact, do movie studios want to actually save cinema experiences? So I'm probably doing that in the next week. Yeah. But I mean, what year were you born? I was born in 71, so I remember a world before physical media.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't.
81, but yeah.
So you would pretty much, I mean, you were around the same time as VHS was, but I'm guessing at 1 year. So you might have been at 1 running off to the video shop to come back with Abel Ferrara's Driller Killer or something. I'm not quite sure.
I mean, I got all kinds of great video store stories as well, but just to kind of answer your question, yeah, I remember when we got our first VCR. I remember what a big deal that was, especially for my mother, who she was a single mother and grew up in at least for a time, we grew up in less than great sort of financial situation, and VCRs, I mean, nobody would know this now. People younger would know this now, but they were super expensive back in the day.
Yeah.
And for us to get one, I remember everything about it, every little button on it, all the, it didn't have like the remote attached to it. It wasn't quite that old. Yeah. I do remember
the cabled remote. You're like, really? Yeah. But top loader, I'm guessing it would have been a top loading VHS.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I do remember. I remember, I guess sort of the onset of VHS tapes and what a big business that was, and how they were everywhere, not just video rental stores, but they were in grocery stores, they were in pharmacies, everywhere that could have a little rental section had one. It was really kind of a time, at least in the US, it was quite a time.
Yes, so, same.
Yeah.
Gas stations, petrol stations, they had them. Usually on a spindly thing, standing in the middle of the floor. You turn them around, look at the different covers. There was usually a lemon popsicle there, usually a Driller Killer or zombie flesh eaters or something like that. But I often reminisce about me as a kid in the early 80s. Just I couldn't go home because my parents weren't home. It was raining. I had like 2 hours to kill, so I'd just wander around the video store. And they just let me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't misbehave. I didn't like wreck the joint or try to look at the top shelf type things. Yeah. I was just fascinated by the cover art, which again is something that's missing on streaming. The box art, turn around, look at it and go, I spit on your grave. What is that about? Whose grave? Why is she spitting on it? Why are all her clothes in rags? What's going on? Later, obviously, you discover it's Demi Moore on the cover, which is just weird and mind-blowing. But
yeah, I remember a lot of that when I was a kid, when my mother would go, there was a local grocery store we would go to called Acme. It was a chain. I don't know if they're still around or not, but and they had I would say maybe like a 10-foot rental section in one of their aisles, And it was pretty tall, lots of tapes, and of course it was the late '80s, so it was just lots of horror because that's what people rented, right?
Yeah.
And I remember she would do her shopping, and our routine was I would just sit there and look at these VHS tapes and just imagine how cool these movies must be. Because again, we didn't have a lot of money, so she couldn't always rent these movies. My introduction to horror movies kind of came not from the rental market, but from some babysitters I had, as many people in the '80s, I think their introduction to horror was. But
Yep.
I remember distinctly at that grocery store looking at the backs and the front covers of Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. I see the nice Leviathan poster behind you there.
Yes.
And Nightmare on Elm Street 4 had just come out. And I remember just looking at those and just wanting so much to watch these movies. And eventually, of course, I got my chance. But I remember looking at the back of Hellbound and had that shot of Pinhead in the doctor's uniform, which of course was famously cut from the film. And then when I finally saw Hellbound, I'm like, where was that picture? Where's that shot of Pinhead and the female Cenobite in the medical garb? But yeah, so it was a fun time, and it just kind of I don't know. Some kids would I don't know, watch sports games or do whatever they did, and my imagination was definitely held fast.
So I want to see more Cenobites. Never mind
Cenobites.
New York Knicks or whatever. I want to watch Cenobites and weird portal dimension boxes and hooks ripping people to bits. But you would have been about 8 years old or something, I guess. Hellbound and Elm Street for late 80s, 89, something like that.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
I mean, my introduction to horror started so young. It was just it's not a crazy long story. It was just like we were really, really young. My mother was a single mother, and she would have to go to work, so she needed, especially during the summer, she needed a place for us to go. She could just leave us. So my brother and I, we ended up, we were in like sort of a housing development, and there was a couple that she knew. I remember their names, Bill and Bev, and they said, yeah, we'll babysit your kids. They were nice people. They were cool. Now, Bev was she was just kind of this normal woman in her probably 40s. Bill, I always like saying this, was a one-legged Christian pianist. He would go to different like churches and like sort of senior citizens homes, and just play like gospel music for them on his keyboard. And he was just a very nice man. But his dark secret was he loved horror movies so much. They both did. Wow. So they had a VCR. They would tape them off of HBO that they were probably stealing. They were probably stealing HBO at the time. And so they would show us all these horror movies, and that's how I got into horror movies. My brother and I, So. Yeah.
Do you remember some of the early ones that you would have seen?
I remember obviously the Elm Streets and stuff because those quickly became my favorites. I remember seeing, of course, the Friday the 13th films, and I don't think I actually saw Hellraiser at their place, but I do remember the film they wouldn't let me watch. And I will never forget this because how upset I was. Now, one of the films they said, sure, have at it, was Last House on the Left.
Wow, okay. That should really be on the no-no list, that one, shouldn't it, for a child? It really should.
You would think so, but I'll tell you, when I first saw it, I was too young to really understand a lot of what was happening. I didn't know what sexual assault was. I knew that people often had sex in movies, but I didn't know like that there was like this very bad form of it for a child. I just didn't know it. And honestly, I found the violence quite tame in relation to a lot of the movies I was watching. So Last House on the Left did not register as this really shocking film for me because I was like so young. But the movie that they absolutely would not let me, and when I say me, I mean me, not my brother. My brother was allowed to watch it. I was not. The film I could not watch was The Reanimator.
Okay.
So they said, Chris, you have to go sit in our kitchen, which is connected right to our living room. You can't watch this movie, but your brother's going to watch it. So I got to sit in the kitchen hearing everything that was going on with this movie, and it sounded amazing. And being so upset and crying because I wanted to watch this movie. And I did not get to see The Reanimator. They said it was too much for me.
I was going to ask what was the reason that they picked that one that went, that's too much, but Last House on the Left isn't. It's an unusual, it's a weird choice, isn't it? But
it was an interesting time to be alive. Yeah. But yeah, that was, they definitely were my introduction to the genre that I've loved ever since. So
I think my introduction, the first horror movie I ever saw, obviously Jaws or whatever, when I was a kid and saw that on the big screen, but I can't remember it. I was just told that I'd seen it. I overheard the soundtrack to The Omen when it was on TV, and I remember for weeks I had nightmares with the Rottweilers in the graveyard. I'm like, what the hell are they watching in the other room type thing? Eventually I saw The Omen. Last night I watched the first Omen, so
yeah,
it was okay.
What did you think? Did you like it?
I liked it. I liked how it tied in to the first. I love the Richard Donner Omen.
Oh yeah.
And I like the Omen 2 and the Final Conflict. I like those ones. Anything after that, I'm a little bit. I choose to just not pretend, they don't exist. But I liked it. I saw some people when it came out of the cinema, they were going mad, as the internet does. They've changed it, they've ruined it, they've retconned it, and so I was watching for things that they've drastically changed, and it's like a couple of tiny little bits, like she died in childbirth, and it's like in this film she doesn't. I'm like, well, that hardly doesn't. It takes a lot to ruin a film for me. It doesn't take a lot to ruin the film for the internet. You could just do anything, they go crazy.
You're not kidding there. I haven't seen the first one yet. I'm very excited.
I haven't drastically spoiled anything there. It's just like a single line of dialogue in the Donner one. It's different in.
But even again, not having seen it, and I will because I do love the first three films like so much. Not having seen it, it would almost make sense that she wouldn't have died in childbirth because the people that were telling him that in the first film were in on it, so they would have been lying the whole way.
And that's what it feels. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because obviously, having seen the Donner one, that Damien came from somebody else.
Yeah.
Given to
his real mother
Gregory Peck, and so it does feel like there's a bit of a conspiracy going on. Look, we need to get this baby into the arms of a politician type thing, and that the first Omen feels like that's what they were doing. But it's good. There are some characters in the first Omen that are playing younger versions of ones in the other Omen. So there's a nice.
Oh, cool.
There's a nice tie-in. I thought it's good.
I remember when I was watching Dr. Sleep a couple of years ago with Lydia, and I was not expecting there to be a spoiler alert for those who have not seen Dr. Sleep. There a young version of Jack Torrance in it. I was like, holy crap! Was not expecting that one. That was super cool. So. And I know that didn't work for a lot of people, but it was a nice kind of surprise for the big Shining fans out there. So I
thought it was good.
Yeah,
I would recommend the first Omen.
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
People are now telling me to watch a film called is it Immaculate? That's the one.
Yeah,
because it's kind of similar, I believe, to the first Omen. But I'll find out.
I remember when you had Stu on the show some weeks back, and he was kind of talking about that, how they both kind of came out around the same time and had this similar sort of, similar story anyway, if not, not identical, but maybe somewhat similar. So it's kind of funny when movies like that are like paired with one another.
What's your take on Stu Miller's critique of films? I often say to his face, I'm like, you just seem to hate everything. What's the matter with it? And he has mellowed a little bit after being on the show quite a lot. But if you go back to the early ones, he literally just destroys everything. I wouldn't want to be a horror filmmaker and send him a screener. It's not happening.
I've often said, even when I was doing Bind Torture Kast, I often said, if you're going to be that negative, why do a show at all? Like, what is the purpose of getting yourself so riled up or watching movies that you just don't enjoy? Just turn them off and go to the next thing. Like, life's too short. Yeah. And I still do believe that greatly, but there's also now maybe a part of me that has mellowed with that, where I realize, maybe some people wouldn't know what to do if they didn't have bad films to review or talk about. Like, maybe that is just something they're really good at doing. And as long as, you have a good reason for not liking something, I think it's valid. I think it's like, there's a point to the quote negativity. If maybe you feel like you're doing a public service or whatever, but on the whole, I think a lot of people that, and I'm not saying Stu's like this because he seems to have some pretty good takes on films, but a lot of folks out there really seem to really kind of revel in that hate, just that meaningless sort of foundless hate. Like, okay, you hate a film, I get it. Why? Like, what's the reason for it?
Because it's terrible, Chris. Because it's awful. Because I hated it. That's why. Yeah, but why did you hate it? Because it was awful. You can never get an answer out of these people. I've tried. I had a run-in with someone when Madam Web came out. Yeah. And I eventually watched Madam Web. And I'm like, it's all right. It's a fun film. It's entertained me for an hour and a half. That's all I need from that type of movie. And I'd put a post in on Facebook saying I'd watched it and I quite liked it. And this person came, no, you didn't. It's terrible.
You're wrong.
Like, but why is it terrible? And his answer was, watch it and you'll see. And it's like, but I've already seen it. And I told you I liked it. Just, it's like the Blair Witch Project is a good example. I am okay with people saying, I don't like the Blair Witch Project. I love the Blair Witch Project, but a lot of people don't like it. And you go, why not? And they go, the shaky cam makes me sick. Fine. I'm okay with that because you've given me a reason why you don't like it. Just don't say it's terrible because I don't like it and it's awful. That's not exactly constructive.
It gets very old, and unfortunately, it seems like and I hate to use the word. I hate the way this word gets thrown around, but I think in a way it does oddly fit. There's sort of this culture of negativity that has been sort of proliferating on the internet, and I think there's I have a lot of theories about it, but it's not just all, well, I need more clicks, because like not everybody is monetized, so they don't really care about that. But I do think the internet has done a really good job at sort of, and social media and the like has done a really good job at sort of equalizing everybody. So if everybody's a rock star because everybody can kind of shout their silly opinions on the internet, then nobody's a rock star, right? If everybody's a rock star, then nobody's a rock star. So people, I think, in many ways, sort of started taking it in maybe a somewhat opposing direction, and started getting very just vile and hate-filled, because that was a way for them to sort of stand out from the rest of the people. Yeah. But now everybody's sort of doing that. So now, if you want to be the true edgelord and the true sort of rebel, now you say you like things. So now we've come full circle. Now liking things makes you the rebel, and then you got a whole group of people, almost like you're like kind of what you're telling me about, that are telling you you're wrong for liking something. How dare you?
In my top 200 films, which has gone to 200, not 100 now, I've expanded it. There are so many films in there that it's like, you know what? If I put this list public, I will get destroyed for having Meet Joe Black in my top 50. And I'm okay because I love that movie, but even Brad Pitt doesn't like it. It's like, give me a break.
I never understood the hate for that movie. I always thought that was a fun movie. Watching Death and Anthony Hopkins kind of walk around and have conversations was a good time.
It's a 3-hour film where not much happens, and I love that about it. It's just that I can relax, and I mean, it's got a great music score as well. But
it does have a good score. I remember that.
Yeah. Do you think if we transplanted the world back to when there were video stores and kept the culture that we do now with the internet, you'd be picking a film up going, I might watch this, and then some stranger would slap it out of your hand and go, that sucks, and then just like hit you in the face or something. It's just, it never happened. I never came out of a video store having returned a film I didn't like and then felt the need to run up to a bunch of strangers and go, listen to my thoughts on this film. It's terrible. You just didn't. You moved on to the next movie. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, like, look, we're on a podcast, right? We're kind of giving our thoughts on stuff, and it's going to go out there on the internet. So, we're, in a way, we're part of this whole thing as well. But, it was a more simple time. And it was, you didn't have that community, that instant community of being able to say like, hey, I just watched, what did I just watch the other night? I was telling you about in that comment, I just watched Handling the Undead the other night, which is based on a book I love. And it was phenomenal. It was great. There's now a group of people out there that have all seen the movie and probably would all agree, or some of them maybe not, that this movie was really something and everybody should watch it. Back in the day, you would rent Handling the Undead. You'd never know if anybody watched it. So you didn't have that instant community, but you also didn't have the instant sort of just frothing mad mob of people that wanted to spread their own unhappiness into others and sort of make them one of us, and sort of spread that that sort of vile sickness to other people and make them as miserable as they are. It's just, I don't get it. And
I don't.
Once again, 100%, this is not Stu. Like, because I know Stu loves stuff. Stu, this is, I'm kind of more talking about those other folks out there. But yeah, I'll be honest with you, like, part of the way the fandom has been reacting to things, and again, I don't really watch like comic book movies or that stuff, but even just within the horror community, the way the fandom was getting for a while, that was also part of the reason why I decided to step back from BTK, because I kind of thought, like, I used to enjoy doing this show more than I do now, but if like the only people that are listening to it are kind of, I shouldn't say the only, but if a lot of the people that are listening to it are just sort of jerks and are like, you know, just like they listen to it just so they can argue with the host's opinions. Like, and we never had a huge like online presence or anything. Like, and that was very much for my own self-preservation because I didn't have much desire to interact with people. But I really did not much respect the community I was now a part of.
Yeah.
So it was very easy for me to kind of take a step back at that point. So
it's a bit like being a Star Wars fan nowadays. It's like, I don't really want to hang out with other Star Wars fans because if you look online, you're like, no, I don't want to hang around with them. They're venomous. They will murder me in my sleep for saying, yeah, an acolyte's okay, it's fine. So I'm going to stay away. I'm going to stay away from them.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I know. I guess everybody kind of experiences that sort of fandom and that I guess they appreciate things differently, I guess I'll say, and that's my nice way of saying some people are jerks and some people aren't, but I don't know. There's a lot of that online now, unfortunately, and I hate to sound like an old man, but I do miss those days when people weren't so connected and could just enjoy things without even having to consider what other people might think about them enjoying things. It was an odd thing that I never really considered could go away, but it kind of has. So, like
being able to walk into a big shop and buy a DVD or a Blu-ray or a VHS.
Great segue indeed. It is now very much, it still exists, but in a much more limited capacity. Now, what does it look like where you're at, as far as like where can you go if you were to leave your house right now? Where could you go and buy movies from?
There are, if I'm traveling half an hour in either direction, not in car but on a bus or whatever, there is one shop that way, which is the equivalent of a Walmart. I used to work in that particular Walmart and I was in charge of the video section. It was huge. It was massive. Now it's a wall probably about 15 feet by about a dozen high, and that's it. It's not maintained. It's just the chart stuff. So it's your Dune 2s and your Argyles and all that sort of stuff. Whereas back in the day, they had copies of The Woman, all sorts. The whole back catalogue, that's gone. If I go the other way, there is one shop, and it's called CEX, and it's where you just buy secondhand. Yeah. You know, people trade them in, get store credit, and that's two. If I want to go any further, it's Manchester, which is like an hour away. There is one HMV there.
Okay. And I've seen pictures of both CEX and HMV when I was part of some like DVD, Blu-ray collector, like horror collectors groups when I was still on Facebook. Yeah. And I'd seen some of the cool stuff people would find in those places. Because you always got horror fans trading their stuff in. So there's always going to be like, some copy of some cool movie that otherwise would be very difficult to get your hands on. At seemingly good prices, it seemed. At least they're not bad. Of the stuff. Yeah. So those are your options now, huh?
I think Amazon is probably, if I want a specific title, then Amazon is the best one. But the thing is with Amazon, you see a thumbnail, you see some pictures, and that's why I started doing some of the show-off videos on the YouTube channel. It's like, because I don't know what these box sets look like. Maybe other people don't, so I started doing them. But I went into a CEX like a month ago, and this cost me £10, and it's a big 32 movie Abbott and Costello box set.
It's awesome.
Which they're all individually. I think I did a video on it anyway, but it's like for £10, that's really cheap per movie. Amazing.
Yeah, and they're all actually in cases too, which I love. They're not in those like awful cardboard things.
No, I have some of those, but I own this. It's mine.
Yeah.
It's never going to go away unless it breaks or somebody steals it or whatever. And
Your
if I
internet goes out,
decide,
you can still watch it.
exactly, and that happens, that does happen.
Mhm.
And if I decide, well, I've watched them all now, I'm going to give it to Chris. It can get passed on to somebody else. Streaming, no. I don't know where they're streaming all the Abbott and Costello movies. Probably wouldn't have watched them if they were. I just like the fact that this box set was for sale, and I picked it up.
It's amazing, yeah, and what a cool find, and that's something that can absolutely, positively never be replicated with streaming, with digital distribution, is the idea of going into a store, finding something at an insanely good deal, and then bringing it home and owning it and having that physical thing. Sure, you can go into a digital storefront, you can go into your Apple Movies app or Amazon or wherever else that you rent your movies from, and you can certainly find something that you've never heard of before, and that's awesome. And you might even rent that thing, or you might even purchase that thing. And I've done it, but the feeling is lessened. It's the experience is cheapened, and maybe I just put too much thought into all this, but like there is definitely something special about going somewhere. Maybe you're looking for something, maybe you're not, finding something amazing, maybe something you didn't even know existed, or maybe something you've had your eye on for a while but it was always too expensive, and then actually getting that thing. And of course, I'm speaking of films. That is such a cool feeling, and again, something that can't be replicated in the current distribution model. It just can't be, at least as far as I'm concerned, it can't be.
It's the same with music.
Yeah.
It's like you can have an iTunes library full of stuff, or you could have a CD. That's hell. Look at that. See, right by my desk. That is amazing. I can put it in the CD player that I've got here. I can watch it over there, go downstairs and go to a friend's house, go and put this in. I'm not carrying a hard drive or whatever with digital music on, but there is something magical about having the disc or the CD in your hands on a shelf. One of the things I'd started doing when I'd done the top 100 movies, which is now top 200, is trying to collect the physical discs of all of those movies. I think I've got maybe 10 or 11 that I've not quite got yet, so I've done quite well. And they're at the top of the stairs on a shelf. And the amount of times I'll walk up the stairs at night, and I've put them all in date order. So 12 Angry Men is the first one, and Steve Jobs, I think, is the newest one.
Okay.
And I'll just look at them and go, oh, I'm going to watch Lost Boys or Road Warrior, or because they're there in my face. If these are all digital, I've got to choose to go look for something rather than have it stared in my face. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch an Abbott and Costello film. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's super. I mean, digital's great, and I could extol some of the virtues of digital. I think digital is great for many reasons. You can get some great films very cheap and have them very conveniently located and watch them across multiple devices at a moment's notice. That's great. And I'm pretty lazy, so I love. Hey, if I don't have to get up to put a movie in, that's great. That is not the sole reason why I would go digital, but it's always a nice bonus. I figure for myself, like. If it's a movie I really love, I want to own that physical copy, and I want the best possible physical copy. And I have some movies here that I'll show you that very much sort of speak to that. But absolutely, like you have to, okay. So I've sold a couple of my movie collections over the years. I'll go through a thing where I'm trying to minimize, and I'll sell some collections and pretty much get rid of a lot of really good stuff, but always hold on to those few films that I would not get rid of. And I always kind of gave myself the measurement of like, if I have a t-shirt of this film, if I care that much about this movie that I bought a t-shirt about it, like I'm wearing a Sadness shirt right now, right? This is my Sadness t-shirt.
I love that. You recommended that to me. That was amazing. I've since then gone on to recommend it to other people who have been like, oh my God, that's the most brutal thing I've ever seen. Mate, you're welcome.
So if I have a t-shirt about it, I want to not only keep the movie, not sell it as part of that collection, but also own the best possible version. And it's so funny that I just brought up the Sadness, because literally just the other day I just received this. This is a 4K edition of the Sadness that was just put out through Vinegar Syndrome, I believe. I think it was Vinegar Syndrome, and has this really just nice hard slip here. And then it has inside another nice hard slip with a dual sort of cover. And then you take it out, and it has, of course, the movie and everything. Just a beautiful little collection. It wasn't even that expensive. I think I paid like $30 for this thing. they sold out in, I don't know, less than an hour. They had a couple thousand of these with the slipcovers. They sold out within less than an hour. I was at a rib fest downtown with my wife. We were just getting some food, and I got the email, or get it now. And I'm like, oh, I can wait till I get home. And I just happened to like look at it, and I saw they had a couple thousand copies. And I checked 5 minutes later, they're already down to under 1,000. Like, I got to order this now. But this is a great example of like that thing you can't get with digital, you know. And if and I do have a digital copy of The Sadness as well. But if, you know, Apple ever goes away, which they won't, but if you know, the Shudder decides to pull the movie from Apple Movies, I don't have that movie anymore, and Apple can't do anything to help me with that. But now I have this really beautiful boxed version of The Sadness that I will own forever, right? And because I don't have kids, the discs won't get ruined, so it's all
exactly.
good.
Are there extras on the disc?
Yeah, there's some new stuff on it. I had another edition that I'd gotten from Raven Banner when the movie first came out. It comes with a nice 32-page booklet as well, with like storyboard stuff.
Nice.
A couple of the short films from the director, one of which I'd already seen, is amazing. And some new featurettes and stuff. So it's definitely worth picking up. You can still get it, you just can't get it with the slipcover. So it's definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of the film. You know, and it's just that I think there's that level of fandom that we have where we want to sort of own this thing and own it forever and preserve it and keep it close to us, that I just feel like maybe that gets lost in the digital age, right?
It does. Yeah. Because it's like, I think, like you said, there are some really good things about digital / streaming. There's also things I don't like, but the good things are, if it's something I'm just going to watch once, then I'm okay watching it on streaming or renting it on VOD or something. But if it's something that I really love and I'm going to watch it more than once, I will own it and put it on a shelf or in a plastic storage box, as the case may be at the minute. But
that makes total sense too. Why would you, if it's something you're going to watch more than once, if it's that important to you, why not own it? If you can financially do so, why not own it? And kind of keep that piece of art close to you, and then you can always, I mean, as good as streaming has gotten, like quality wise, it still cannot beat a physical copy of a disc, right? So why not own it and have that best version of the movie?
And also with TV, I think I've binned most of my streaming platforms, which I've talked about. I now have 2 more. I've signed up for 2 more yesterday because I'm getting Disney Plus for £2.40 a month for the next 3 months. I'm like, well, that's fair enough. I would spend more than that on chocolate tomorrow in the shop across the road for 3 months. It's fine. And also Paramount Plus for £2.40 for the next 3 months. So I was on Paramount Plus last night. I'm like, right, let's check out the Mayor of Kingstown, see what all that's about. And also Yellowstone. So I'm watching those 2 shows. I will easily watch both those shows fully within 3 months. If I went out and physically bought those, it would probably cost me more than £7.50, for example, and I'm not really going to watch them again, so I'm okay with that. But
we had a similar thing a few months back in this household where my wife was playing, like yourself, was playing Hogwarts Legacy, and she's a huge fan. She beat it the first time, started playing through it a second time. She really loves that game, and we were, of course, as you're playing it, you're like, oh, maybe I want to watch those Harry Potter movies again. It's really good for that. So. And I had never seen, I'd seen the first couple Harry Potter films way back in the day. I'd never seen them all. I know they got progressively darker, so I always kind of did want to see them.
They get better as well.
Yeah, I thought so too. So we're like, oh, well, let's see what we can find. We should be able to find them somewhere. It shouldn't be hard. And it's not hard to find the Harry Potter films digitally, but not like where you would think they would be maybe free, like a Netflix type thing. Like, no, like if you want to watch those Harry Potter movies, at least here in Canada, digitally, you have to either buy them outright through Apple or one of the other streamers where you're going to pay like $60 for all the movies or maybe more.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, that's just
for
digital. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or you can sign up for here. It's Crave. I don't know if Crave is Crave. It's basically like the HBO Max kind of, or Max, whatever it's called. But we don't really have that here, so it's
we don't Crave. Either.
Yeah. So that's how we were able to, watch the Potter films as well as the 3 other ones, whatever they're at.
Yeah, the Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah,
they're a bit rough, those. I bailed out after the second one. I'm like, I'm good. I like the Harry Potter ones. I think they're really good. Fantastic Beasts, I'm like, I don't care. So just...
Yeah, and they had that, and they had a couple other the Harry Potter documentaries. They had the one with the stunt guy who got injured, I guess, that Daniel Radcliffe befriended, and we didn't get around to watching that. But so what we did was we did a month. She paid for it, a month of Crave, which was very inexpensive. I don't know what it was. It was very inexpensive. And we watched every one of those damn Harry Potter movies, as well as the 3 Fantastic Beasts movie. So 11 movies for the cost, whatever she paid, like maybe $10-15 for the subscription for 1 month. And I think that's a great justification of digital.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth the trade-off of not being able to go into a store locally and just pick the movies up. But, I mean, that's kind of where we're at now. There's just not a lot of places that we can just kind of go and buy this stuff, unfortunately.
And it's like, you always hear the argument about streaming, as streaming platforms start to put the prices up, to go, yeah, but $15 for Netflix per month, that's pretty good for what you get. And it is. It really is.
Sure.
7 or 8 for Paramount. Again, that's worth it. 15 for Crave, that's worth it because you got all the Harry Potter movies. But then when you start hovering about 7 or 8 different streaming platforms and your streaming bill is about $120, I know people who have those bills. Yeah. No. I would rather go out and buy like a £10 Abbott and Costello thing. Go, right, for the month of April, we're just watching Abbott and Costello movies, and we're going to finish those off, and then next month we'll go out and buy another box set and do it that way. It's the community, the sort of pile of streaming costs is ridiculous, which is why I decided I'm getting rid of most of them. Yeah. The thing is, I didn't miss them.
Yeah.
Because I just look around, and I think I've had like 3 Apple trials for 3 months at a time, because if you keep your eyes open, you're like, oh, get it.
Yeah, sure.
Done. So you're covered for 3 months.
Yeah. If
you're smart with it, then... But then I hear people saying, oh, I can't be bothered cancelling. Why? It's easy. You just go, when does that run out? It's very easy.
In your phone, and you're good to go.
If you're happy to spend money and you just can't be bothered cancelling, send me money and I'll never remind you to cancel. It's insane.
Yeah. We had some streaming services going for a while here. We had Arrow that we used. I think we got it because she needed to watch a movie for her podcast, and we could actually only find it on Arrow. It was something that oddly neither of us had owned. So we were like, oh, well, Arrow's pretty good. They get a lot of pretty good films, not just horror. They get stuff from a lot of genres. So we got Arrow, and that was very cheap. Arrow's like $5 or $6 a month. Like, it's very inexpensive. And then she's had Shudder for many years, and she had a Netflix account. We weren't really watching Netflix. I mean, every once in a while we would watch something on Netflix, but I'll be honest, like, Netflix really didn't hold much value for us. So just recently she canceled Netflix. She canceled Arrow because we weren't using it anymore. We still have Shudder going, which Shudder's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
We use that regularly enough to keep it. I think that was the only other one we had, and then she kind of ended up putting the money into YouTube Premium or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like, because she does a lot of stuff with YouTube, so it honestly makes more sense for her to not have to sit through all those awful ads. Yeah. So that the money's better spent that way. But agreed. I remember when the subscription services first started coming out, people were so excited. Yeah, we can finally cut the cable or cut the cord, whatever they were saying, and we don't have to be a slave to the cable companies anymore. And it's like they've just kind of ended up right back in the same boat. The only difference now is that they can cancel whenever they want, but they're still paying a lot of money every month because they have Amazon, they have Netflix, they have Shudder, they have Disney, they have Paramount, they have every one of these freaking there's a bunch of them in the US I'm thinking of that are around. It's just like, and now they're spending well over 100, some people closing in on $200 a month on streaming services, and it's like there's no possible way you were watching that much content every month.
No.
So
because we probably watch more content than a lot of people, than a large percentage of people, and I don't watch enough to justify that amount on streaming.
Yeah, it's definitely it's weird how people, like, it's almost like people don't collect movies anymore. Now they collect subscription services. So,
Yeah.
and it's just, I don't know. I'm the same way with like the game services as well. Like we're both, big gamers and stuff, and I had Game Pass for a while. I had PlayStation Plus for a while. Game Pass I had, as part of different promotions. I could get like $1 a month for like, 2 years. Like that's pretty cheap. I found I was still not playing the games on Game Pass because I had plenty of games I had bought that I wanted to play. And then with PlayStation, it was just like, I really only wanted the service for the cloud saves, especially when I was migrating my PS4 stuff to my new PS5 when that came out. And it was just like, I can't see much of a reason to do it for another billing cycle. So I'm not a big fan of those services because I would much rather buy and own that game because that preservation is a point of contention and worries me these days, as far as like a lot of stuff is only getting released digitally now. It's like once those services go down, those games are just gone. Those movies are just gone. I think about back on Netflix when, I don't know if you ever saw The Night Comes for Us back in the day.
I didn't see it, but I know of it.
Yeah, it was a great movie with some of the folks from the Raid movies, and just dark, fucking super brutal, really violent, action movie basically. I've been waiting years for that movie to come out on a proper Blu-ray. It'll never happen. Netflix doesn't care about that stuff. It's not really their movie. They just kind of, I think, distributed it. But that will never get released. Shudder at least releases their stuff.
They have, and that's a nice thing to see that they do, because they're a streaming platform that are obviously not as big as an Apple or Netflix or anything. So they could use all the help they can get driving people towards Shudder. I mean, it's quite cheap, which is good. There's varied content on there, and they've not got the biggest library in the world, but they do change it. So you're never going to get to the point where you're like, I've seen everything on Shudder now. But I couldn't find anybody I know who also has Shudder. So there's not a lot of people using it. So for them to go, we're going to start releasing things on disc, that's a good thing. I'm very happy when they started doing it. So.
And they get their hands on some pretty good movies too for like distribution. Like, I mean, they get the sadnesses of the world. They get all kinds of movies that, like, I mean, they had, what was that movie that's coming out now? It's getting the remake with James McAvoy.
Oh, I saw that. I liked that film, but I hated the ending.
It's a rough ending. I mean,
I didn't agree with the ending. I'm like, well, nobody would ever do that. And I think that put because it was the Soska sisters that were recommending that film when it came out. And they're like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, well, if they say it's crazy, I'm going to check that film out. And I enjoyed it, and it was great. But then when there was the whole part of the ending where you do this and do that, and they go, okay, you're like, no, who would do that?
Yeah,
so
you gotta wonder.
Do you think they'll change that for the McAvoy one, or do you think they will stick with it?
The pessimist in me definitely thinks they'll change it, because there's no way they can deliver that kind of ending to a wider audience. But on the other hand, I think about the rare examples of movies that had even more messed up endings than their original counterparts. I always think back to something like The Mist, even though there was no original version of The Mist, had a way more messed up ending than the book did, right? Stephen King famously said he wished he had kind of thought of that ending or something to that extent. And there have been those rare cases where a remake manages to outdo what the original did, and or at least not change it too much, like a Funny Games, where it was like, I mean, it was the same director and everything, but still it was for a wider, more North American audience. They didn't try to soften that blow at all. So maybe they'll keep it the same way. I tend to think they won't. I tend to think they will, they'll go less Funny Games and more Goodnight Mommy with it.
Right. Yeah.
Because that was not a good remake. Or Inside, that stupid Inside remake, like something like that.
I haven't watched the remake, but I did for the first time watch the original one.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that film. That's my type of movie. Home invasion movies just freak me out anyway. I absolutely love them. And that film went places where I'm like, there's no way they're gonna. Oh, they did on quite a few occasions.
Yeah.
And I told Annette about it. I said, you've got to watch this film. And she refused to watch it on her own. She's like, you watch what? I'm like, I'll happily watch it again. And it was, her main question was, oh, there's a cat in it. Does the cat? And I'm like, kind of does, but it's off screen. Don't worry about it. Otherwise, she'd have bailed. But yeah, she loved that film as well. But so you would stay away from the remake?
Yeah, I would. Like, Inside's a very special film for me. That was actually the film that Luke and I first bonded over.
Oh wow!
What, like, French horror in general, but High Tension and Inside especially were the two films that. And then, like, you know, I had said, hey, you know, because at that point a Serbian film hadn't been released officially yet. I said, hey, have you seen a Serbian film? He goes, no, I've been trying to get my hands on it. Do you know somebody who has it? I'm like, I have a copy of it. So that was how we bonded. We were just
opened your jacket and went, here it is. Like the string of watches in the old.
But it's just, you know, when horror fans find each other, it's always kind of comical and sweet in that way. But yeah, we've always loved French horror, and you know, one of our earlier episodes of BTK, we had done the major ones. We had done High Tension and Inside and Martyrs all in kind of one episode. And Inside was always a favorite of ours. So when I heard you had finally seen it, I was super excited because, what a lovely film. I actually picked up that version too, that Second Sight. Yeah. I picked up that nice box set version. Of course, I can't play the disc, but I wanted.
Is the disc not? I mean, you've not got a 4K player, have you? Or is that?
I do. Yeah,
you do. Aren't they regionless? I thought 4K ones were. Oh no,
it's region B only. So, and a lot of that stuff, a lot of the well, I should say a lot. Some of the Second Sight stuff, a lot of that Arrow UK stuff. Like, I bought that Amazing Henry 4K box set that came out a couple years ago because I love Henry, and of course the disc doesn't play. The one disc doesn't play. One of the discs does. So, whatever. It is what it is. I really just wanted more of the box set itself, and if a proper disc, like North American disc ever comes out, I'll just pop that disc in there and then make my own box set. So. But yeah, Inside's incredible. We'll see what that Speak No Evil remake's like. It's not like a favorite film of mine, but I am interested to see if they go wacky with it. But you know, like with Shudder, like I was saying, you know, they get their hands on a lot of that stuff. Like they really have their finger on the pulse of what is cool and what horror fans are really going to enjoy. And in many ways, I think kind of are the tastemakers to a point with internet horror. But it is cool, like you say, that they're actually putting out these discs and stuff. Yeah. You know, it's really, really cool because you just don't see it anymore. So
because effectively what they're saying, what Shudder are saying is, you don't need to come on our streaming platform to watch that movie, and that's really ballsy for a streaming platform. So you know, like you said, you're not going to see Netflix going, yeah, we're going to release Axel Foley on disc, which is just the weirdest thing ever. The fact we're getting a fourth Beverly Hills Cop film that's going straight to our televisions. I've still not quite come around to understanding how that's even a thing. Yeah. But I watched a screener discs as well. Is something I used to get sent a lot of. Yeah. I used to probably get maybe a half a dozen to a dozen of those per week, every week, and it would just sit in a box because I'd never had enough time to watch them all. They are few and far between now.
Yeah,
I still get the Second Sight ones, so that's where I got Inside. Cool. I watched the other day, which is coming out, or it's out now from Second Sight, a Korean movie called Gonjian Haunted Asylum.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Which is pretty good. I enjoyed that. That's coming out on disc, and there's some special features on that. It's probably about an hour's worth of interviews and stuff. I got a screener disc yesterday for Malcolm X, which is coming out in 4K. Nice. And I'm like, I haven't seen Malcolm X for years, and Annette's a huge Denzel fan. So I'm like, you haven't seen Malcolm X? She went, no. And I'm like, please send me a disc. And it came through, and it was great. Mm-hmm. I got another one for Soldier Blue, the 70s Civil War thing, which I've not seen for many years. But generally, it's all digital screener links that come through, which I don't want. I spend too much time staring at a computer. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it when I'm watching films very often. I like the physical discs. So I could put them in a player. I'm not lazy. I will happily get up and put it in a player and press
That's
play.
Super cool. You know, when I was doing BTK, I'd reached out to a couple of the companies where like we were already reviewing their movies, like the Unearthed Films of the world and Synapse and stuff like that. We were already reviewing their movies that they were putting out. And so I reached out one day and I'm like, you know, I can't hurt to ask. So I reached out. I'm like, hey, you know, I have this sort of, you know, underground horror podcast. You know, we have a couple of listeners. You know, we're doing all right.
A couple? You had more than a couple?
Well, we did all right by the end there, but you know, it was sort of like I was like, you know, could you maybe send us some screener discs. We'd love to, I'm going to buy these movies anyway, but if you would send us some screener discs, that would be great. Maybe I shouldn't have put it like that, because they're probably just thinking, well, why the hell would we send it to you if you're just going to buy it? But they didn't understand, like, I'm the kind of person, when I get something for free, whether it's a screener disc, whether it was, when we had my wife had a Spotify account for a while, and I hate Spotify. I think they're absolutely the worst thing that's ever happened to music. But like, they're helpful for two reasons. One, I can listen to them while I'm playing like a video game, which is cool. I can just put on Spotify and listen instead of some game music. And then the other thing is, they're great at helping me to find some new bands. And then what I do is, once I find a band I like, I'll go on Bandcamp and hopefully find the Bandcamp page and just buy their music right from them. So they're good for that. But that's how I am. Like, I'll experience something in a sort of a free way and then go actually buy the art itself to support it. And but yeah, we never got any screener discs from any of the major players I'd sent the emails to. I got a few from a couple directors over the years, like, who however they found out about the podcast and reached out and said, hey, I have this little movie coming out if you're interested. And so I think maybe that happened maybe 3 or 4 times in our entire 8.5 year existence. So I was never really able to kind of break through in that respect and get some free movies sent our way. But that's all right. Whatever. I had enough movies to watch, I guess. So
maybe when Bind Torture Kast comes back as like a monthly or even a quarterly roundup of stuff, maybe, start getting your stuff that way.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe it'll come back one day. Yeah. And I'll be more professional this time around, because I was horrible at that the first time.
Do you know what? I don't think, because I listen to some shows and it's like the one you did, the one that we're doing, we're not trying to be the news.
No.
We're not sitting in shirts and ties going, I know for a Nick story, and we're not super polished. And I like that about podcasts. It's I like listening to a conversation, whether it's you and Luke insulting each other and then moving on to talk about a bit of movies and stuff. It's fun. It's like hanging out with friends that you haven't met and you're not in the same room. That's the sort of shows that I listen to. So I mean, technically you weren't professional because you weren't being paid.
No.
So
no, and we definitely didn't cater to anything but our own tastes. That was the only. We were doing the reviews of the movies that we wanted to hear talked about more. Like, that was it really. And of course, like, promote the good stuff in the world of horror. Like, those were the only goals I ever had with that show. And and that's why one of the reasons why I've always liked your shows is, and I've been listening to your shows for like 10 years now. Like, way back in the day, I remember it was right around the time I'd started BTK. I think I may have already been listening to the horror show when you were doing that, and that was you and Stu.
That was me, Stu, and Lauren.
What was her name?
Lauren Rebecca Reed. She was on it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she was great. Like, I remember you guys having so many great discussions on that show, and that being one of the big inspirations was like, I need to do a podcast so I can be as good as these people.
Oh God, you surpassed it in quality wise, not quantity, obviously. Quantity, I'm still winning, but yeah, the horror show was an idea that I came up with Stu Miller. It's like, we need to do this, and we'll just do it once a month or whatever. And then it sort of just fizzled out. Lauren just disappeared. I've not even found her on physical media. She just sort of wandered off. And over the past 10 years I've been podcasting, you'll know that quite a few hosts just stop appearing. For whatever reason. They never send me an email going, you suck, I'm out of here. They just disappear. My friend Bob, I haven't seen him for like 4 years. We used to be really, really tight like that. He just disappeared. Rob, I still speak to Rob quite often, but we haven't podcasted for 8 months. I did a solo show the other week, and I'd mentioned John Fouts, Stu Miller, and then Rob phones me up. He's like, you didn't mention me as one of your current co-hosts. I went, current? You've recorded for 8 months? He said, oh, has it been that long? Yes, it really has. So it's, it just evolves, and the one sort of current, I guess, is me. I'm Richard Gere out of Officer and a Gentleman. I have no place else to go other than just to podcast and build a legacy for Annette to listen to when I'm dead. So
well, it's cool because you do attract a lot of really kind of like-minded people, whether it's through like a specific genre or just the love of the film in general. And everybody has their own takes and everybody has their own opinions and sort of, everybody's like their own character. And I love that. Not to say you guys play parts, because you don't. I hate that about podcasts. People who like pretend to be like this character, this ridiculous, version of themselves. I can't stand it. Just be yourself and enjoy what you're doing and do it until you don't. Right. But that's why I think your shows always work, because you always the right people seem to always sort of be in your orbit for you to be able to pull in and sort of have on your shows. So as a listener, it always, even if it's somebody new or somebody different, it always feels like a Stuart show. It always feels good, right? So
yeah. And I still have my regulars. John Fouts is somebody I recorded with him the other day. That's going up on YouTube tomorrow night. So I've already scheduled that one. I'm trying to make sure that all the YouTube ones go out in the audio feed as well, because some people might not want to spend 2 hours, watching two people talking. They might want to listen while they're playing video games or something like that. But with your show, was there ever a guest that you wanted on, like a filmmaker or somebody you never got, or not?
I had some pretty cool guests on over the years. We didn't do a lot of them, but there were always people that like meant a lot to me to get on, whether it was the Vogels from, August Underground, or we had Jimmy Screamer Claus on like twice. And remember Paul Hyatt was like such a huge get for me because I was such a fan.
Do you know what? Just to sort of blow smoke up your rear end, I'm friends with Paul Hyatt on Facebook.
Yeah.
I have a signed Howl German Blu-ray release that he sent me saying, thank you for your support. I've never had him on a podcast.
Oh, you should change that. He's one of the nicest men. We had such a great conversation. I remember that day I was such a fan of the Seasoning House, and I'm such a huge werewolf fan. And I was a fan of his special effects work and stuff too, but I was such a huge werewolf fan. I was so excited for Howl. And I remember that day I kind of worked it out with him to get him on the show, and he was just so accommodating. And I remember leaving work early that day because I was so excited. And I worked kind of like 20 minutes from my home, and I remember like leaving work early, left like in the early afternoon, and like flew home, was just so pumped up to do this interview with Paul Hyatt. That felt like a rock star to me. I mean, we did a lot of like kind of smaller, more independent films in many cases, but that was like huge for me. This is like somebody who's done some really impressive work, both behind and in front of, or behind the camera in terms of special effects and of course directing. I mean, Seasoning House is such a powerful film, and to have that director on was just amazing for us. And so that was a great experience. And getting Adam Mason on was another one that was always like such a cool experience for me. Like I always think about that very fondly because he really wasn't doing a lot of interviews. And the movie that we were reviewing, I mean, we reviewed a couple of his movies, but the movie we were predominantly talking about that night was a movie called Pig, which had never been released. And he specifically did not want it released because he was very remorseful for the making of the film and how he treated his cast, even though they were friends. Like just the punishment he put them through to make this movie. It was a very dark period for him, and he didn't want it celebrated, so he chose to never release it. So the only way that movie even exists is people selling bootleg copies of it at horror conventions, basically. And when I contacted him, I said, we're reviewing a bunch of your movies, including Pig. He agreed to come on, and then when he first gets on, he's like, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do this. Because and he's an English guy too. Like he lives in LA, but he's from England, I believe. And he decided, it was the right time to talk about the movie. So BTK oddly became the way for Adam Mason to kind of come back into the scene and sort of set the record straight. And then I started noticing after that episode came out, he started showing up like at conventions, showing up. And like he had kind of gotten out of directing for a while. Now he's starting to direct more. And then he would just message me once in a while on Facebook and say, hey, I'm re-editing Pig because they were going to do this final showing final and official showing of it at some horror convention. Afterwards, he was going to break the hard drive that it existed on, so it could never be shown again.
Wow. Okay.
Just really cool stuff like that. So I don't know if there's anybody I always wanted to have that I never got to have on, but the stories behind the people that did come on were really kind of touching. Yeah. How about yourself? Is there anybody you ever wanted to get on your shows that you still can?
Mick Garris I've had on twice, which is
that's amazing.
That kind of blows my mind. First time was an hour on Zoom, and then when I actually got to meet him, I was like, inside I was so starstruck. And then when he turns around to me and he's like, "Oh, Mr. Bannerman," I'm like, "Holy shit, he knows my name. This is just incredible." So I'm glad I've got him on. But because you predominantly cover horror, I cover like everything because I just love most types of movies.
Yeah.
I'd love to get Oliver Stone on, but I also wouldn't want to because I wouldn't know where to start with that guy. He's very, he knows everything about history. I don't want to talk to him about history. I want to say, what's the favorite movie of yours you've ever done? I just want to have a nice chilled up. Tom Cruise is another one as well. Regardless of whatever you think about his beliefs, clearly they're working for him, so I'll have some of that sauce. He's just a big fan of movies, and I just want to sit down and but I'll pretty much chat to anybody. I remember when I was at Grimfest once, and I was waiting for this Pollyanna McIntosh to show up, who I knew from Twitter, but I'd never met her. She had been on one of the horror podcasts, she's been on a podcast, so she's been on twice. And one of the people at Grimfest came over and said, who's it you waiting for? I said, wait for Pollyanna. Oh, we've got this other guy, Staten Row, who's over there. And how do you fancy interviewing him? I went, yeah, it's fine by me. Right. Have you seen his film? I went, no. And he went, oh, that could be an awkward interview. And it really wasn't, because it's it's easy to have a conversation, whether you've seen the film or whether you haven't.
Yeah.
And so I will literally speak to anybody. The Soskers obviously was a highlight.
Yeah.
Where I had these notes in my head about what I was going to say to them. And then as soon as they started talking, I'm like, my notes are going to be no use here whatsoever. And we just chatted. But
yeah. And that's the best, right? I mean, it's the best as somebody who's hosting or interviewing, and it's also the best for the listener, obviously, because you can tell when the person asking the questions is as much of a fan as the person answering the questions. And I think listeners respond well to that, and that's why I always really love anytime you're interviewing somebody, whether it was Grimfest or otherwise, like it's always a good interview because you're so good at that. Just having a conversation, even if you have not seen the film, you're obviously a film fan. So there's your point of origin. Go from there, right? So
does it work for you whether you've seen the film or whether you've not seen the film, or does it work both ways depending? Because I'm always conscious. It's like if I have you on and you're talking about the film you've made, and somebody's listening and they haven't seen your film, they might get taken out of the way.
I'll be honest, just as a listener. If the interviewer is good and the person being interviewed is like responsive and it really is kind of enjoying being part of that process, I don't think it really matters. And I say that because I've listened to a lot of podcasts, not just, like a lot of those folks that you interviewed at Grimfest, I hadn't seen those movies. I don't think I'd seen any of those movies, right? So, I mean, I'd seen a bunch of stuff AJ Bowen was in, but I didn't see the movie like that he was there for, right? So
I still haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I don't even remember what it was called, but I remember you interviewing AJ Bowen and thinking that's awesome because AJ Bowen.
Night Sky, I think it was. Yeah,
he's an awesome dude too. But like I listen to a lot of podcasts where they might be reviewing a movie that I have not yet seen, but the quality of the discussion between the 2 or 3 or 4 people is enough to make me think I need to go see that movie. That used to happen with Lydia's podcast, Dead Air, like years ago, well before I ever met her. I was just a fan of her podcast, and so I'd listen to her and Wes talk about these movies that I had never seen, and I'm like, I need to go check that out. So it just made me want to go see the movie. No amount of even if there was like spoilers or whatever, it didn't really matter because the discussion was so good. So. And again, I think that's what it comes down to. It's between those two parties. As long as that discussion is good, it doesn't really matter for me anyway.
And one of the cool things that when I went to Grimfest was I was able to take my physical media disc of The Stand and get Mick Garris to sign it. I did try and work out a way to take a digital copy of it, but I couldn't come up with it, so I had no choice but to take a physical disc, which is in the other room, unlike the digital version. So it's there's the other upside. I don't know whether you're a big autograph collector or, I mean, obviously a physical media collector, but if you're going to get something signed by somebody, an inlay cover of a Blu-ray is pretty
you
good.
Can't really go wrong with that. I used to have a bunch of stuff. Some of it got sold with my collection, but I still have a couple signed things actually behind me. I mean, tilt my camera up a little bit here. You might be able to see a Freddy Krueger glove sitting on
nice
right there. Right in the middle there. There's a Freddy Krueger. That's actually signed by Robert Englund. But when I met him, I had a bunch of stuff signed. But including actually that Freddy figure that's behind there, and I had him sign his book, his autobiography, and he drew a Freddy picture in there for me. Really nice guy. But I do have some autograph stuff. But funnily enough, you mentioned signing digital copies, and so years and years ago I was at a concert of an artist I really love, a Canadian artist. This is when I was still living in the US. Canadian sort of progressive metal artist named Devin Townsend, and I was there. I paid for the sort of VIP ticket, so you get a little meet and greet before the show. It's cool, whatever, sign your stuff. He's not like this huge rock star. Well, a lot of people brought, this guy has a huge body of work, a lot of CDs, and everybody brought like all their CD covers, and you're not going to bring the whole CD, so they had just this stack of covers that they wanted all signed by him, right? And I'm like, I don't have any covers. I don't have any of that stuff on me. What I do have, because back then we all still used iPods, not iPhones. I have my iPod, which has every Devin Townsend record on it. So I had him sign the back of my iPod.
That's
and
pretty
then put
cool.
a piece of clear tape over it, and now I have this Devin Townsend signed iPod. So that's pretty cool. That's getting cool. Digital music signed story.
So it is something physical that has been signed, but you found a nice little loophole there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'd mentioned in the YouTube comment as well some of your favorite box sets and stuff that you bought over the years. Which ones spring to mind when I say, Chris, what are the best ones that you've bought?
There's been so many great ones. I would definitely immediately go to one that I've been waiting to get my hands on for so many years, and it was only available in the UK. And then finally in 2000, and I guess it would have been 17, it finally came out for North America, and that would have been the Scarlet box, the Hellraiser Scarlet box set or whatever it was called. It had the first 3 Hellraiser movies, and then recently it's gotten re-released as the Quartet of Terror, or I forget what it's called now.
Bloodline in it. Yeah,
Bloodline in it in 4K, and I got I ordered it from Era UK and got the Chatter edition of it instead of Pinhead on the cover. It has Chatter. So that's a really special one. And then I have here, I'll just quick show them to you. There's not like a big story, but these are 2 of my very favorites. I'm a big fan of a lot of the Kamichi edition films, and they put out like these box set versions of films. And a long time ago, they put out editions of The Raid and The Raid 2. And they're both kind of packaged the same. They have this like kind of neat cover when you pull it out, and then I'm a sucker for steelbook, so it has a nice steelbook. And then has a bunch of supplemental stuff in there, booklets in there.
That's nice.
I love, and posters. I love the Raid movies, so it's kind of win-win for me. But those are a couple of my favorites. Another one that I absolutely love and can't quite live without, one that has survived multiple collection sales and would never get sold. I will to you when I die, but that's all. That's the only way you get your hands on this. Is this I Saw the Devil edition. Yep. I love this movie so much. Yeah,
is
again,
that steelbook as well, because it's really shiny. That's nice.
Yeah, it has like some cool cards and posters and stuff like that in there. It's just a wonderful edition of a flawless film. I have some other ones like some cool Kamichi editions of like Left the Right One In, for like the cool lenticular cover, and again steelbook, and Fight Club, and I love Fight Club, but those are like some. But all my big box sets are kind of upstairs. All the the bigger, like I have like like that Rec box set that Scream Factory put out a few years ago that has the 4 Rec movies in it, and of course that big Friday the 13th one from a few years ago.
That's one I really wanted, but
Yeah.
it's never come out in the UK over here.
No?
And I don't have a multi-region Blu-ray player. I have a multi-region DVD player, but not Blu-ray. But because of the rights thing or whatever, never came out in the UK. We can get like a 1 to 8 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You want them all, really, don't you? So
Right. That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I have like so many crazy box sets upstairs, like the Twin Peaks A to Z one that came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
That has like the full, first 2 seasons plus the return from a couple of years ago, and then the 4K disc of the 1 episode and all the extras. I box sets are amazing. I love them. They, the unfortunate part is the amount of room they take up, but
and the price.
Yeah,
in some ways. What's the most you've ever paid for a box set? I think for me, it's probably about 150 UK pounds, which was for a 10 film Oliver Stone box set, which I imported from the US. I think like 2001 or something, very early on. But it was 10 films. A lot of them were director's cuts, like Nixon, JFK, Any Given Sunday. They were extended versions. All but 2 of them had full-length commentaries, and I'm like, this is just like such a wealth of Oliver Stone information. It's worth 150. Since then, I don't think I've A, been able to, or B, justified paying that price for a box set. But some of them do range. Twin Peaks probably would have been quite pricey, I would have thought.
Yeah, Twin Peaks was about $100 when I bought that. And that disappeared very quickly. Like that particular edition, it comes in like the box itself that opens weirdly, like that you can't even get that. As far as I know, you can't get that anymore. But there's been a couple box sets I've bought. I know the Friday the 13th one I paid, I want to say about $120 maybe when that released. And I was lucky enough to get. It came with a couple posters, one of which would not be available anywhere else. Within like the first couple thousand orders, got it, and then that was it. So I was lucky to get that. And then there's a couple other ones I know that I've bought that were fairly pricey. And then I know there's like some other movies I've bought over the years that were like, that's probably where I've probably spent the most regrettable type of money is like, like before a lot of these movies started getting re-released, they were available in such limited capacities that like, if you like back in the day when I wanted to watch Necromantic, there was only one way to do that, and that was to find a DVD somewhere, find a VHS tape somewhere. And at that point, I think Barrel had released the only 2 Necromantics on DVD, but each one was going for anywhere from $70 to $100 used. And that was like, if you could get it in that price range, you were doing okay. I think when I bought the first 2 Necromantics, I spent about $200 on both of them. So those were probably 2 of my most expensive DVDs I've ever bought. And it was well worth it because I love those movies, and it was the only way to really get them. Of course, a few years later, they're getting released on Blu-ray, and now there's all these different editions. Demons was another one, the Demons films. Very tough to get your hands on those back in the day. Now, you can find them just about anywhere. But it's. I think that's another thing that I have a problem with in terms of the digital age is like people don't put in that work anymore. Like it's almost like it devalues the experience. Like people don't have the same. I sound like such an old man here, but people don't have the same. Commitment to enjoying art and experiencing that art because it's always on demand. Like it's at your fingertips. You can go on your phone and listen to any album from any artist you could possibly imagine because you don't have to like actually go out and find it. And it makes, for me, and I'm speaking personally, it makes the enjoyment less because it's like, well, if I don't like it, I don't like it, whatever. Whereas if I buy that album or I buy that movie, I put in the work to locate it, find it, have it shipped to me, or go out and get it. If I don't like it, I'm willing to give it more of my attention because I want to like it that much more. I want to enjoy it because I've given so much of my time and effort to it already. And I think that's maybe part of my problem with the digital age is like you used to have to go out and try to find this stuff. You really don't anymore. It's just kind of there.
That's like mirroring my thoughts. It's like I'd mentioned
Yeah.
screener discs, and I used to get them sent through all the time. And I used to watch some, and that was a good film, and this was a good film. But I always enjoyed the films more if I went into a shop, paid £10 for the DVD,
Yeah.
went home and watched it.
Yeah.
I would never go out and pay money for a film, get halfway through and go, "Yeah, I'm done. I've got something else to do." But sometimes you do that with screeners if it doesn't grab your attention or whatever. But I enjoyed putting in the work.
Yeah.
I was more choosy. I think that's the other downside with the world of, and this applies to digital music as well. I think it cheapens the art.
It does.
Because the consumer is going to go, I want to listen to some music, put some music on. Next. They don't put the time in to listen to it. Therefore, everything becomes easily disposable. The amount of people I know who will watch, oh, did you watch such and such a film? Well, I watched it for 10 minutes and then put something else on. It's like if you went to the cinema, paid your ticket money, sat down, and you wouldn't get up and leave in 10 minutes. Very rarely would anybody ever do that. But with digital, people do it all the time. And from a music point, here's a musical point of view for you. So let's use Das Hell as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I do have the capability to skip a track if I want to.
Sure.
And I don't know whether CD players have shuffle on them or not. I know iPods do. But
I don't know if they still do, but yeah.
When you're putting all these tracks on any EP, but specifically this one, I'm guessing there's thought that goes into the order in which they go on.
100%. Yeah, there's a, again, I'm a music fan, so it's like, you know, I kind of imagine how do I want to hear this, and I also try to imagine a listener experience in terms of like I always try to start each album with like something that's almost, it's like the most listener friendly song on the album, something to really kind of ease people into what's coming. Not that the albums are like heavy and over the top, but like some of the songs get a little bit more complex. So I always want to start with something that's maybe a little bit that requires less emotional involvement from the listener, and then I kind of move on from there and try to kind of gradually pull them in a little bit deeper. That's kind of, and there's other things to it as well, but that's sort of how I do it. Like it's kind of how I want to hear it, but also like what I think will maybe be the best experience for the listener.
And yeah, with listening on Spotify or whatever, you listen to one track, you get an advert maybe. If you've got that planned, then it's another track, and then maybe another advert. It takes away the whole experience. I've been watching a lot of films lately where you see them put the needle on a record and it plays. I kind of miss those days. I miss them.
It's so funny you bring that up too. And just as a point with Spotify, I think Aenorex is the least Spotify friendly band ever, because like those songs all take a little bit before they kind of get to where they're going. I think it's interesting because I'm the one who wrote it, but maybe for the listener it wouldn't be. So I always would joke like with Aenorex, it's non-immediate music for a very immediate world. Everybody wants everything right now, and Aenorex, that music, you need to kind of like give into it a little bit and just kind of let it take you where it's going to take you. So I'm definitely not a Spotify friendly artist, but it's interesting you bring up vinyl, because it's like I think we're seeing a huge resurgence in vinyl over the last many years. I mean, I collect it, I love it, and I think that really is the pendulum swinging in the other direction of everything we're talking about here, where you know, we're seeing a large group of people who do miss the days when one would just listen to and experience a piece of art, in this case music. And yeah, like it's cool to like vinyl, but I'll tell you what, it's not cheap to like vinyl. Each one of those records costs a lot of money these days to pick up. So for somebody to really get into that collecting and get into that way of listening to music, you have to have some expendable income. And I think we're seeing sort of, again, that pendulum swing in the opposite direction, and people trying to find some way to experience art in a more meaningful way. And I think they're looking backwards now. And now that's why we're seeing vinyl sales eclipsing CD sales, you know, because it's like less people are buying CDs than ever, but you have, you know, more people buying vinyl than they have in the last probably 30 years. So, you know, there's something happening there. And I think it's, I I know, excuse me, for me personally, I love putting on a record when I'm upstairs in my living room where I have my record player, when I'm cooking in the kitchen, because for the most part, vinyl really requires you to be there to experience it. It's not something you can just throw on your phone while you do chores around the house. Like, you have to kind of be in the moment there experiencing it. And I think vinyl is sort of what, maybe we're going to see more of that in the future. Maybe we're going to see more sort of people looking backwards to ways of enjoying films. Or so maybe you're talking about saving cinema. Maybe there'll be some radical reinvention of cinema that comes. Who knows?
I think what's happening to cinema is what happened to the music industry. It's taken away. I personally don't think the studios are too bothered. They're like, well, no cinemas means we can get everybody to rent our stuff on VOD. We get 100% of the money. I think there's a lot of that. And I think with Furiosa going on to VOD really fast, Fall Guy going on really fast, that just kind of backs up what I've told a couple of people, like, no. And I'm like, well, whatever. I'm either right or I'm wrong. I'm fine with, if I'm wrong, I'm happy about that. But it must sort of, I mean, when I get a new EP of Aenorex or even CDs, that's headphone music. That is big headphones, dark room, amazing. I don't listen to music on my phone. It kind of horrifies me. In the same way I don't watch Lawrence of Arabia on my phone. So I've just compared you to David Lean's film there. So put that on your next album cover. The musical version of David Lean.
No, and I think that's commendable. I really do. I think everybody's going to experience things in their own way. We're talking about, that while we don't necessarily agree with this digital revolution, like, obviously there are others that are very much very interested in that. But I think people are going to experience things in their own way. And I always love when I hear people or see people really kind of in the moment experiencing a film or an album, or like you say, when you listen to Aenorex, you throw on some headphones. That's the best way to listen to that music, I think, too. But like, everybody's going to kind of experience something in their own way, I suppose. The thing I really hate is the fact that we seem to be edging ever closer to this future where there will only be one or two ways to experience these things. And that's I think that, I'm not angry at the young kids for only liking their digital movies or any of that stuff. It's the fact that if more and more people are only experiencing things in a few ways, then those are the only ways that will exist. And people like us who enjoy owning films, enjoy owning albums, will have a very finite select number of venues that we can go to experience and buy those things. Like, I love Vinegar Syndrome, Raven Banner, Unearthed, to a lesser extent Scream Factory, but I love sites like Diabolic DVD, all these great places where we can get all these cool films. I don't like that those are pretty much the only places we can get those films.
Yeah. And
eventually a couple of those will start going away.
Yeah.
And that bothers me. Like, that's just, I like choice for sure. And I like choice when it comes to, there's plenty of choice for digital. There's almost no choice for physical anymore. So it's just kind of
too much choice for digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was chatting to John and I think also Stu, and I brought up the subject of our favorite films. And I'm like, we've all created these lists of our favorite movies ever. And I said to certainly Stu, when was the last time you watched a bunch of them? And he couldn't remember. He's like, I don't know. But as I'm sure you remember growing up as a kid with the VHS or the DVD collection, there would be like a Lethal Weapon or a Die Hard or a Serbian film or whatever that you watch on a monthly rotation, if not more.
Absolutely. 100%.
But how often do people, I'm starting to do it more because I vowed to do it this year. So I'm going to go through all my 200, rewatch them, decide if they still need to be in that list, or is it just, rose tinted glasses that makes me think Bad Influence with Rob Lowe and James Spader is a great film. I watched it. It's still in there. I have that on DVD. So I'm enjoying rewatching all these favorite films. I don't feel the need to try and complete every film needs to be watched. And I think that's where the young kids are now. They've got to keep up. They've got to watch this show before everybody else has finished it. They've got to watch all these new Marvel shows here, there, and everywhere. And it's a bit oversensitive. It's like too much stuff coming at you.
It's crazy. I don't know how people even. I do not know how people keep up with that. I don't understand it. Like, I mean, I sometimes joke. I'm so thrilled I was never a Star Wars fan, because I feel like I would have no, or like a Marvel fan, because I would have no time. I would have no time to watch all this shit and watch the horror movies I like and play a video game and work on new music, like and go to work. Like, there'd be no time for this stuff. Like, it's almost like you have to, like, you know, pick a couple things that you really like and do those things. And I think with, you know, the social aspect of film, especially these days, where it's like people all seem to like watch the one thing. You like all those weird Netflix phenomenons. Remember, like, Bird Box, when that was on?
Squid Game, quick! Everybody watch Squid Game, right? Now everybody watch Baby Reindeer. Right? It's madness.
And I know, you know, if they do another, I never saw Squid Game, but I know if they do like another Squid Game thing, I know I'm sure it'll be a massive success. But like, everybody talks about it very loudly for a very short amount of time, and then it's over. And I've not heard anybody mention Squid Game since. I've not heard anybody mention Bird Box since, until the sequel came out. Then people talked about it for a second, and then that was over. It was just like, that's the sad thing, is the sort of almost transient nature of art now. Is like, you know, there's so much blood, sweat, and tears put into making this stuff, and the way it's distributed and then consumed, not as art but as content. That is the sad thing, is because it's almost immediately forgotten. There's no attention span to like wait for good art anymore, and then once you consume it, you move on to the next thing immediately. So I hats off to you for re-experiencing those favorite films of yours, because I think that's where the memories are formed. That's where the for a lot of us, that's where the love of the medium really comes from, is when we first experienced some of that stuff, and going back and re-experiencing it, and maybe re-qualifying it and see if it's something you still love as much. But still, like, re-experiencing, I think, means a lot, especially in this day and age, right? So
I dug out my copy of the French Connection 1 and 2 on DVD, put it in, rewatched the first one, rewatched the second one. I've seen that a few years ago. Checked the special features. I'm like, my God, there's a DVD commentary by Gene Hackman.
Nice.
Amazing.
Nice.
It's not on digital. In fact, the digital version on Disney over here, because they've got the Fox stuff, that's cut, censored the version of the film. The DVD I've got, not censored. So I get, when you start getting into the horror things, then that's when you really, you know, the physical media stuff, certainly if it's uncut. I mean, Serbian film's a great example. That's being, I don't know how heavily cut it was in the US or Canada, but here in the UK it went through many chopped versions.
Yeah, and there were a couple versions in North America as well. But yeah, I mean, horror itself, kind of, there's something sort of, there's like an intrinsic link between horror and physical media that I think exists very differently from other genres. Like, you don't see, like, at least maybe they're there and I've just not noticed that, but you don't really see like websites popping up to sell like this is all of your like underground Western movies that you want on Blu-ray. Like, here's a website for that, and here's like one for rom-coms. Like, no, but meanwhile there's like 100 of them for horror films, like, because you know, people really care, and horror fans specifically, I think, really, like, a lot of them, especially the ones like around our age who grew up during the time when home media was becoming a real thing, they know like how important it is to actually own it. And I would think, especially, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think especially folks in the UK who went through the video nasties where it was illegal to even have some of this stuff. You know, I would think you guys probably have an even a greater appreciation of owning that physical media.
Because nobody can come and take it away, and this is an uncut version of, you know, film X, Y, or Z, or pre-certified version. But you know, I remember the whole video nasty thing. I was about 12 or something when that was kicking off. But every time I speak to Jake West, we usually end up talking about the VHS days, because he's also fascinated by it and has done
his documentaries
and stuff on it. It's really
both of those. Draculian Days is good. The first one especially, though, That is literally one of the best documentaries, period, I've ever seen. I never got to like tell Jake West that. I don't think I ever reached out to him online, but that documentary.
Well, here's
so
I'm
good.
I'm going to take a timestamp. So I will send Jake West this clip, right? So you can tell Jake West. I have lots of famous filmmaking friends. It's amazing being a podcasting geek. It's awesome. So what would you say? I mean, you should have Jake West on the podcast.
I think I may have chatted with him like once or twice online. I don't know. He was always, I always saw him on like Facebook and stuff. He's always seemed super cool. But no, Video Nasty is that documentary is like, I remember when I ordered it from Amazon, pre-ordered it, and it showed up like the day it was supposed to come out. And I remember looking at the length and go, man, I don't know if I'm going to get up through all this tonight, because I wanted to watch it all in one sitting. I realized it was quite lengthy. And I remember watching it all in one sitting. It went so fast because it was so well done and so informative. And it actually, I mean, I knew somewhat about the Video Nasties era, but I didn't know nearly as much as that documentary and the interviews contained within that documentary really kind of educated me on. And I ended up finding out about a couple films based on the list of films that were in that documentary. I'm like, oh, I've never even heard of that movie. I didn't know that was one of the Video Nasties. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was where I found out about the film Possession with Sam Neill. Yeah, which has since become absolutely one of my favorite films ever. And it was because of Jake West's documentary. So thank you, Mr. West, for two amazing documentaries. Because Draconian Days is I believe that's the name of the sequel, right? Yeah. That's an incredible one as well. No, not even trying to minimize that one. That one's an amazing documentary. So if the folks out there have not seen either of those, and you're at all interested in how horrible censorship actually was back in the day, particularly for the poor folks in the UK, my God, take a look at those documentaries, because it's quite shocking. We don't think like that anymore. We don't think like, outside of, a Serbian film getting cut or whatever, like the odd film here and there. We don't think in terms of like, oh, it's not the way things are, but it's the way things were, and it was scary for a while. So
I'm always hoping that they do a third one.
I hope so too.
Because I think, I mean, not even necessarily about the 80s, but here in the UK, there was a whole cluster of censorship going crazy again. Human Centipede 2, Serbian film, all that sort of stuff. So I think there is scope. But I know Jake has made another documentary about a filmmaker called Cliff Tremlow, who's a UK guy he made a film called GBH back in the 80s, which I remember seeing the cover, and the cover art is something that has made us into the film fans we are, I guess. We're like, wow. I can remember a film called The Boogeyman, which I remember the cover. I've never seen the film, but I can remember that cover as if I was looking at it now. So
is that the Yuli Lamel film?
I couldn't even tell you that much. It's just like, I think I know that's what it was called, but yeah. Those were fun times to be a film fan, I think.
Yeah.
Not if you were one of the ones getting arrested for having like, an Evil Dead VHS in your car boot or whatever, but
I love the footage. I think it was in his documentary, or maybe it was some other documentary I saw on Video Nasties, where they show people how they would smuggle in copies of like Texas Chainsaw or whatever the movies were, and they would smuggle the VHS reels inside of the cassette shells of like Disney movies or whatever else, like that's incredible. Like, because like here I'm thinking like I would never even think to do that, but like these were the lengths people would have to go to, and they would still get caught because like the authorities knew to look at this stuff. Like, hey, if you see some like weird looking guy who probably likes horror film who's bringing in a bunch of like Disney movies, check the shells, because they're probably not Disney movies.
I guess that's one thing that's never going to happen on digital, though, is it? People aren't going to be maybe they're smuggling USBs, but they just, Google Drive it or transfer it or something, and then go through customs and then come out the other side. So I think it'd be all right.
Yeah, I mean, now I guess the real film rebels, the folks that I was just talking about used to smuggle this stuff in. Now it's just I guess the only way to do that, to be a rebel now in the film world and digital world, is just be pirating stuff, right? Which, I mean, now that everybody pretty much watches stolen content, a lot of the time, even they're not really rebels anymore. So I don't know.
So it's always a shame when you see on somebody's comments where they're like, "Oh, I don't pay for music anymore," or "I don't pay for movies." It's like, you're part of the problem. You're helping musicians not make music in the future. Not now, but in a few years' time, they're just gonna stop. And it's the same with filmmaking.
There will always be those people who feel the intense pull to create art, whether it's musicians, filmmakers, authors, people making video games in their basement, a team of one guy making a video game over a period of like 9 years. Like, there will always be those people. I think the major problem is with subscription services and with digital is those people are going to become fewer. I don't think music, movies, and none of that art form will ever really go away. But people like me, like I create music, but like I don't really make money doing it, right? You know, yourself, like you'll buy a release of mine, and I truly appreciate that. That's great, but like it's not a living for me.
It's not going to pay you. You're like, oh, the mortgage is paid this month. Stuart's bought an EP. Woof.
Yeah,
we can eat.
Like,
yeah, it's not that.
Maybe I can buy, maybe like each record I release, maybe I can buy like a pack of guitar strings when it's done. You know, like, you know, and that's exciting for me, and that's fine. I will still create music. However, it would suck for me if I really wanted to make a go of it when I see other bands, big bands, like bands I listen to that have been doing this for 20 years or more, and you know, they talk about how, you know, their album was streamed, you know, however many millions of times on Spotify last year, and they made $20.
Yeah.
Like there is a problem there, and that's where you're gonna see people who say, you know what, there's no point in me doing this. And you're in that case, you are right. People will stop creating. And so for every person who says, you know, oh, I don't buy music anymore, I just have Spotify, or I just have, you know, YouTube Music, or whatever it is, that's fine. That's your choice. You spend your money how you like. But just understand, there will come a day where like there will be less of that music to go around, because there just won't be as many people creating it. All you'll be left with is crap pop music that's like so ultra produced, and you know, a team of
AI
like 30
produced,
people.
probably not even a team. It'll be an AI produced thing.
Oh my god, that's a whole other show, my friend.
Yeah.
If you ever wanted to hear
with your music, where is the best place for you financially for people to buy your music? Is it the Bandcamp site?
Yeah. It's because a couple albums ago I stopped releasing it on Apple and Spotify, just because I had grown. Like I said, I'm never going to make a living doing this, so I figured, why should I make either of these bigger companies any money whatsoever, even if it's only like fractions of a penny? Why should they get any money from me when I won't ever get a single dime from them? Why not just release? If it's going to get released for free, I can just put it out for free on Bandcamp. And until my last record, I was putting all my music out for free. People wanted to pay, they could pay, and if they didn't, that's fine. Last record was when I decided, you know what, I'm going to start actually charging $6 per release per 6-song release, and anybody who knows the music knows those tracks are usually pretty long, so I think it's reasonable. I still actually haven't even made any money off the new record, because I started giving out copies for free.
Oops.
So no, that's okay. I wanted to do that, so anybody can find me, and I'll give you a copy for free. But yeah, Bandcamp is definitely the best way, because I think it is the best way to give any artist money, especially the first Friday of the month. They have their Bandcamp Friday thing where the artist gets 100% of the money.
Is that still a thing?
Yep, they're still doing it even this long after the pandemic. They're still doing it pretty much every month. I think there's maybe 2 months out of the year where they don't do it. But so yeah, every first Friday of the month, I always make sure I buy some music from Bandcamp, because I know they're getting all the money that day. It's super cool. Yeah. And of course on Bandcamp, if you like what I do, you can buy my whole catalog for 50% off. I did that option too, so you're getting like, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours of music for like, I don't know, I'm like 20 some bucks or 30 bucks, whatever.
Which is like insanely good value for money as well. Yeah. It really is, because you know, $20-$30, it's not that much. 20's a couple of streaming platforms for a month, but the music will last. I mean, the music won't, you know, start and finish within a month. It's not, your tracks aren't that long, but you can listen to it as many times you want, and it will keep you entertained for years. I'm still listening to some of your stuff that you brought out during the pandemic. So
good. Yeah, and you know, like I say, it's people want to buy it, that's fine. I just hope
you kind of
enjoy it.
It always makes it does two things when you say that. One, it just makes me smile, and two, it annoys me a little bit because it's like your music's really fucking good. It really is.
I'm glad.
You at some point in your future need to score a movie if you've not already done one I don't know about, because the type of music that you do would so work. It really
I'd like to. I would like to. It's almost like it would have to be a very close partnership with a writer / director, because like I mean I'm always picturing kind of moving scenes in my head when I'm creating a lot of this stuff and performing it, like when I'm recording it rather. But I also have realized over the years that I'm not great at writing for other people. Like I start off with really good intentions and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this sound this way. And I get what they want. I get what the piece is, and I can make it sound, in this way that will hopefully fit what they're trying to do. Because I have tried to work in that respect with some other people. And in the end, it just sounds like an Aenorex song. Like there's a very specific like DNA that I have with the way I write, and so my good intentions kind of end up falling apart midway through, and I lose the plot, as they say.
Yeah.
So I feel like it would have to be somebody like, I always compare like the writings of Chuck Palahniuk to the directing style of David Fincher. Yeah. Nobody could have made Fight Club the way David Fincher made Fight Club, because he speaks the same language almost as a director that Chuck Palahniuk spoke as a writer, at least at that time. And it would have to be a very similar kind of partnership, I think, in that respect. Like somebody who really, if it's for a film, like a director who kind of like deals with a lot of the same themes that I tend to put into a lot of my music, or at least I think I do. It would have to be that partnership. So I'm sure they exist, and maybe one day they'll pick up an Aenorex album and go, hey, that's cool, I want to work with this guy. But
they should. Yeah, they really should, because I think your music works well on lots of different levels. One, listening to it as a piece of music and an album. Two, an atmospheric piece of music where it's like I can now think about it while listening to this. And then I think it builds visuals in heads, which a lot of the cover art and stuff that you've chosen is of a similar theme across. The other albums are in another room, that's why I'm showing off this one. They are of a similar theme, but they're all different. They fit in their own. It's like with your EPs, they all fit in the same shared universe, but each EP is different. It's got its own identity. If that made any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, because an artist is never in the same spot when they create a different piece of art as they were like when they created the last piece. Even if it's similar, like they're always somewhere different mentally. So I like to think like whenever I create an album, like it has a different sort of voice to it with each, even though there's no singing, there's a different like voice to it with each release. At least for me, that's how I hear it. But I always say I'm like super biased, so I can't ever trust my perception on what I create, right? But speaking of art, I mean, what's going on with you as far as the
Mimi
with Mimi, because you and I were talking a while back about this, and I know you were just talking about it a little while ago in your show, but we were talking about this a while ago, and you had mentioned like it's not going to wrap up the way you want just because she's gotten older and everything. But you had mentioned maybe I could release it almost as like a documentary.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a cool idea that is. Like basically take what you've completed so far and release it as this sort of documentary for aspiring filmmakers. And I always thought, ever since you mentioned it, I thought that would be the coolest idea, and I would love to see something like that. But where is it sitting now? Like, what are you up to with it?
It's in two different states. I mean, you're right, and it'll never get finished the way it was meant to, because Lamissa just finished high school. She graduated. She's no longer 12 years old. She does not look like the person. Some people say, oh, you could just redo it. I'm like, that's not what I wanted to do. So that'll never happen in the way it was meant to. Then I came up with a documentary idea, which is still an idea. Neil Johnson and I sat down over Skype and we had a conversation like this. He was interviewing me about Mimi. When did this idea come? How did that? I had a 4K camera pointing at me at this end, capturing me. So we did like an hour-long interview about everything from where did the idea come from up to the point I hadn't started filming yet. So I've got 1 hour worth of me talking on that. I've got so much footage of that, location scouts, teaser trailers that are shot, photographs, so I can put all that in, mix it in with the conversation that I had with Neil. And there's 1 hour of a documentary. We're going to reconvene at some point, and we're going to do the next part, which will be filming. So how did that go? Well, hit and miss. Going to do that. I've obviously got all the short stuff that I shot for the first and second of the 3 chapters. So I've got all of that stuff on hard drives. And then the third part that Neil and I will is, so how's it all gone? So we have got quite a chunk of it in place. I just need to sit down and edit it. I also sat down last month and thought, right, I need to do something with this Mimi stuff. I'm sure you're the same with some of your music stuff. You're like, I need to do something with it. Even if I just make it and put it out there and it's crap, it's done. It's off my desk. Don't have to think about it and I can move on. And I started assembling a work print of the first and the second Mimi thing, but recombining them Pulp Fiction-y style, flashbacks and all that sort of stuff. That sits as a private link on my YouTube at the minute, just so I can keep looking at it. There's a lot of work to do on it. There's a character I need to somehow replace. Not quite sure how I'm going to do that. And some trims and some scoring and color grading and stuff. But there is a work print of the finished short of Mimi, which I could send you and you can look at it and you're like, but again, there's a ton of work to do to it. It's just the next stage of it. So the documentary will probably happen. The short film thing may happen if I can end up fixing it and turning it into something. But yeah,
I think it's a great idea. Of course I would have loved to see the actual finished films, right? But I think it's such a cool idea to not let basically the actress aging out of her role and some of the other factors that kind of contributed to not finishing it. I think it's a great idea to take it in this different direction because I think there's something there, and I think there's so much value that people could get out of this story about this guy who wanted to make. It was supposed to be 1 movie, or was it 3 movies?
No, it was originally going to be 1. It was originally going to be 1 short film. And then when I was sitting down with Lamissa and her mum, just saying, like, here's the idea for one. And we're having a natural conversation like we are now. Lamissa and her mum said, you know what, we've always wanted to shoot in like a graveyard or something, which is a graveyard that's on one of your album covers. That's where those shots came from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'll write something. Let's leave it with me. It's not that hard. I'll go away and I'll write something. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. And that's where the second one came from. And then whilst I was doing that, I came out with this third idea for the third part, which is a psychiatrist and Mimi in a room and playing a sort of verbal game of chess with each other. And clearly, psychiatrist ain't going to win type thing. And I'm like, those are going to be the 3 chapters, all set within 6 months of each other. And in my brain, it'll work. And then we shot the first 2, and then a pandemic went, and then that just put the skids on everything, and I've never managed to get the wheels back on. But
we've seen so much stuff and so much art come out, particularly in the film world after the pandemic, or even during the last few months of the pandemic, where here's how the pandemic sort of affected this piece of art. And here's like Sadness is a great example, right? Just talking about Sadness for a third time, like here's this movie that was, very heavily inspired by this old comic book series and zombie movies and stuff. But at the same time, like it's very much a commentary on COVID and how we treated one another and how we, some of the things we said and how we acted with one another. What we haven't seen a lot of is like, here's this story about this piece of art that almost was, but because of multiple factors, including a pandemic that the world just was not prepared for, and not that they could have been, it was never completed in the way that I wanted it to be. But here's this other story that can kind of come from that, and then kind of presenting that in the documentary form. I just think that's genius, and I would love to see something like that. And I think a lot of creators, a lot of filmmakers out there would really get something positive from that, because things don't always go the way we expect them to. Creators find that out quite often.
And I'm not shy about going, well, I thought that would be easy, but guess what? No, it wasn't. Who knew preparation was something you needed to do? Who knew about this take more than one shot of the same thing? I didn't know about any of that. So I'm not shy about going, yeah, I thought it'd be easy, but yeah, I kind of made mistakes. But I do want to turn it into something. I think the documentary is probably the way to go. I obviously hadn't forgotten that I'd shot the stuff with Neil, but I think you mentioning it has made me think, you know what, I'm going to work on next week. I'm going to start putting this stuff together. So I may get cracking on that one. So in the same way you inspired that filmmaker to go, do you know what, I'm going to talk about Pig. I'm going to recut it. I'm going to start doing stuff. You've kind of done it to me again with the Mimi documentary. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because I hate to think of anybody's sort of artistic vision just sort of fizzling, right? And sometimes they definitely don't come out the way we hope they will and the way we envision that they will. But I think there's a lot of learning that comes from that too. I can say that definitely personally for myself over the years with not just music, but other little projects I've done where it's like, well, this isn't what I thought, but that doesn't make it less. It just makes it different, right?
Different.
So
yeah.
So I'm excited, and I can't wait to see like what you're able to assemble with that.
And you'd mentioned working together with I'm going to use filmmaker because I'm going to talk about me in a second, and I'm not a filmmaker. I'm somebody who's got a camera who shoots stuff. But there's a project that's been in my head for years, and I've never done it. I've written most of it. People have said to me, you can't possibly shoot a feature film in a day. It's like, you can't do it. And I think you can. Depends what the feature film is. And I've had so many arguments with people online. They're like, you can't possibly shoot a feature film in 8 hours. It's impossible. You need days and this, that, and the other. I could shoot a feature film in a day in one location with 2 cast members and 1 camera. And they're like, no, you can't be done. I'm like, yes, it can. And my premise is, and I'll happily share the premise because I think Aenorex scored it would be awesome. And I'm happy to listen to your input and, off air and stuff, and we can talk. It is a woman who wakes up after a one-night stand in a hotel next to a corpse. How do I get out of this room? The door's unlocked. She can't go away because there's a corpse there and she'll get done for stuff. That's the premise of the film. One woman, somebody playing a dead body, 1 camera person, which will probably be me, filming it all in one location. And that's the one that when writing that, I have listened to a lot of Aenorex stuff.
I think it's a great idea. And I don't mean to sound like a total perv here, but my first question is, where are her clothing? Is she naked?
She is when she first wakes up. Okay. Because she basically, somebody could use, don't tell that, they might steal your idea. It's fine, don't worry about it. This is on record. I copyright it. She wakes up and it's a little while before she realizes the guy's dead.
Yeah.
But who's he? Oh, we're going to sneak out, go to the bathroom, get dressed, blah, 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 comes back. He's not moved yet. And then it's only when she peeks into his eyes, she's like, fuck, this guy's dead. And that's when the whole, I can't get out of this room type thing. But it's one location, it's minimal actor. I easily think you could shoot that in a day.
I think it could be done. I think it could be done for sure. I mean, I've never shot a film. I've never planned to film. I mean, I think... as long as, I don't know, like, I don't know with like setting up shots, because if you're literally just talking about a room, there's only so many shots I guess you can have in a room.
Exactly.
But, and I guess the lighting would be more controllable since it's just one area. So I guess that would be helpful, I would think. But there's probably filmmakers out there like, you're out of your fucking mind. This would be impossible.
Neil Johnson will be listening to this going, no, you can't do that. You need to know. I think it's possible.
When I think about a lot of the films I watch, like a lot of stuff I certainly have watched, where it's definitely more underground filmmaking, more sort of passion led than maybe necessarily like technical expertise led. I'm like, oh, that could be done. Yeah, that could be done. I think it's a great idea. I think it's immediately a very, the story sounds like something that I would really love to see and how that would play out. And as long as, because I mean, the room itself is like, would be not necessarily something that's going to change. Maybe the corpse changes over time. I don't know, but the room is kind of the room. So you'd have to have enough cool story beats to keep people like super involved in what's going on, because again, you're only going to be able to have so much different type of activity going on within this room. But if maybe she's remembering more and more as it goes, who knows?
You've got phone calls she can make. You've got a maid trying to come in the room, out the room. So there are a few. I'm stuck on an ending. I can't quite work out what the ending, but I've got all the script written. I think like the first 50 odd minutes or whatever, but I need to do the final thing. But that's something that I just periodically pick up and work on, and then save it on the Google Drive, and then carry on with something else, watching movies or scrolling through Netflix or whatever. Who knows? But so yeah,
I got an idea for an ending for you.
Okay.
We'll talk though.
We will. But yeah, so Bandcamp, first Friday of the month or last Friday? First Friday.
I believe it's first Friday of every month.
First Friday. I'm gonna get on that as well.
Yeah. Even if I mean, you don't have to buy Aenorex, but I always tell people buy something from Bandcamp the first Friday of the month, because the artist will appreciate it.
It's like if you're gonna buy something, do it on the Friday rather than the week before.
Don't do it the week before. Don't do it on Saturday. Do it on Friday, because otherwise the artist gets 70% of what you spend, which still isn't bad. I mean, most places take a 30% cut, which is kind of the norm these days. Everybody pretty much takes 30%, but if you get it on that day, the artist just gets that extra 30%. And in many cases, a lot of the Bandcamp folks are people who don't necessarily have a lot of money to tour and make merch and all that stuff, so they definitely appreciate it, as do I, if somebody wants to buy something. Otherwise, just enjoy the music, I say, right?
Buy it. I say people should buy your music and enjoy it. So it's the 2-for-1 thing. They will do both. They will do both. So.
Cool.
What are you up to for the rest of your day then, Chris?
The rest
you've
of
got
the day,
you've got more day in front of you than I have. It's 8:00 in the evening where I am.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's only 3:06 here. So my wife and I are going to go to, oddly enough, a physical media shop, because I actually have to return something I bought that had a scratch. It was a used disc, and I recently rebought a used copy of The Signal on Blu-ray, which I love. A.J. Bowen. I had it on DVD for years. They had a Blu-ray, so I grabbed it, and we started watching it the other night, and got to a certain point, it started skipping. I'm like, darn it. So I'm going to bring that back and grab something else. And then other than that, we have some chores to do. It's actually Canada Day weekend here in Canada. Wow. There's a holiday called Canada Day here every year. Nice. And it's sort of like, the U.S. has Independence Day, and
Australia has Australia Day.
Australia has Australia Day, yeah. So that just means an extra long weekend for us. So we'll be off Monday as well, which is nice. And then next week, I'm very excited to say I bought the first 2 tickets in Ottawa, Ontario, to go see Maxine in the theater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
how good does that? That looks good.
So I can't wait. X was so good, and Pearl was amazing. So the same theater that had gotten Pearl when it first came out in the theaters, which was very limited. Not everybody got Pearl. I know the UK didn't get it for a long, long time.
No, we got it. It was like a year or something. Yeah. It was a huge release window for that.
Yeah. Anyway, the same theater that we saw Pearl at is getting Maxine. I expect there to be more people in the theater when we go see Maxine, but as of the time I got the tickets, which was yesterday morning, I pre-ordered the tickets, and we're not big theater goers. We don't really like theaters, but we make an exception for this one, and I'll make an exception next month or in August for Alien Romulus for sure.
Yeah.
We were the only 2 people to have bought tickets so far, so we'll see. We'll see how. Hopefully the theater's not too packed, and we're looking forward to that big time. So.
Let me know what you think.
Yeah. How about yourself? What are you getting up to?
I'm probably just going to find a film to watch. We're trying to catch up on all the big 2024 films that we've sort of missed. So the first Omen was on Disney Plus over here, which is probably very strange for Americans going, what? Why? How's the Omen on Disney Plus? Because we get the Hulu stuff. So I don't know how it works in Canada, but obviously the Omen's not a Disney film in the US. So just trying to catch up on some film watch. I try and do nothing on a weekend.
Yeah. And
then reset my brain for Monday, going, right, got to do all these different things. But
right. Absolutely. That sounds good. I mean, actually, when we get home later on tonight, I want to watch. I probably watch that 4K cut of The Sadness I just got. There's a couple other movies I've been picking up lately that I just haven't gotten around to watching yet. Like we recently got that 4K cut of High Tension, so I want to watch that.
Yeah.
Some other ones, honestly, a bunch of other ones. My last trip to the States, I always come back with a bunch of movies, so I get them from there and then just bring them across the border. I feel like I'm bringing pornography across the border or something.
You feel like a British person in the 80s smuggling.
Well, actually, I had a similar question. I forget what it was. Oh yeah, it was the last time I came across the border. Massacre Video had just re-released Snuff 102 on Blu-ray, and as well as Orozco the Embalmer, two very nasty little films. And I had to have Lydia check the customs list of banned films. I'm like, oh crap, are either of those banned? Because they like at one point you couldn't bring August Underground into Canada. There's literally films I own that could get me thrown in jail for bringing them into Canada. And I thought to myself, this is something most people will never have to do. Most people will never have to check the banned films list before they go across the border to make sure they're not bringing something illegal into the country. Luckily, neither of those films were on the list, so I was able to bring them in with no problem. But it was horror fan problems, it's most people don't ever have to deal with this.
No, and they won't, and they probably won't ever.
And
unfortunately more so because digital seems to be becoming more of a thing. But
absolutely. And before we go, I know we're getting to the end here, I just want to show you something. I brought these. I was trying to I was talking about how the cool thing about physical media is sometimes the stories behind them, and also kind of the sort of emotional tie you have with the acquiring of this thing. What it means something more to you that you're able to get this particular thing. So I have 3 movies here. These are 3 of my most favorite movies and 3 of the kind of rarest things I own that I'm going to show you real quick. So this was maybe the 3rd different version of a Serbian film I ever owned. And this was a version that came out very briefly. It's completely uncut, has some making of features that were never released outside of this edition. I don't think, I won't get in trouble for showing any of this stuff on YouTube.
So picture the baby scene.
Yeah. And it also, so it's the Blu-ray, it's the DVD, and it's also right here, the soundtrack.
Oh, wow, okay.
Had never been released. It's literally a legit official version of the soundtrack on disc. So I kept that, even though, I have the unearthed version that has come out since. This is sort of my favorite version.
Yeah.
I have this, there was a movie that Netflix had distributed years and years ago that was produced or presented by Alex de la Iglesia called Pieles, which I believe is Spanish for skins. And it was never really released. And it's this very bizarre,
that's
body,
weird art, isn't it?
Yeah, and it has this weird pink case, and people with buttholes for mouths, and it's basically about these. It's a very emotional, touching story, but it was a movie I immediately wanted to own, and was really frustrated because I could never find a physical version anywhere. And then one day I had found they had released a physical version through, I don't know who it is, some Natty Perfecto Films, I don't know, or Poughkeepsie Films, I don't know. Okay. But there wasn't a version. I was able to snag it for $60, and this stays in my collection till I die. And then the third and final film that is probably my most important physical media I own. A little gory, not too bad though. It's this version of Subconscious Cruelty, which
that sounds like a charming movie.
It was directed by why am I forgetting the famous cinematographer? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Karim Hussein. Thank you. God, it just came to mind. Karim Hussein, who has since gone on to do cinematography for so many of the films you yourself have watched. He's a wonderful cinematographer. He had made this awful little film. It's really good. It's just really horrific. It's kind of different segments and different things going. I probably shouldn't open it because it's pretty rough. I don't want to get you kicked off YouTube, but famously never released in North America. None of the big horror distributors ever picked it up, and I was able to track this down on Italian Amazon. So Amazon.it, I guess it was,
IT or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I could barely. I mean, I am of Sicilian descent, but it's not like I can read this stuff, right? So I'm like trying to like piece words together, and I should just run it through a translator. But I'm like, I just ordered it, hoping it would play, hoping it would have subtitles, hoping it would like have everything I need. And sure enough, it was a Blu-ray, and it did play. And I have this actual region-free Blu-ray of Subconscious Cruelty, and it is my most prized movie possession. So there you go. I've showed you a bunch of cool pieces of my collection anyway.
I wish that I'd have dug out more of my prized prize. I think one that springs to mind is I have a signed Fellowship of the Ring DVD by Peter Jackson, which I didn't get in person, but a friend of mine, his job used to be maintaining the soundtrack decks in like Abbey Road and Air Studios and stuff. And he kept saying, "Oh, come with me to London, we'll go down." And I'm like, this is amazing. This was like early 2000s when Two Towers had been filmed and it was being scored. And he came in one day and he said, "Oh, I couldn't come and get you last week, so we've done this." I'm like, it's fine, don't worry about it. He went, "But I did get Peter to sign this for you," and handed me this DVD because he was driving Peter Jackson backwards and forwards to the recording studios. And I do have 20 odd years old now, but a signed Peter Jackson Fellowship thing. So I remember you told that story on the show once, and I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. It really is. I mean, sure, it would have been cooler for you to meet him in person, but I mean, for somebody to just like say, "Hey, I did this for you." It's just really nice, isn't it? So cool. Yeah. My God, what a great story that is. And again, this is what I was talking about. In this age of digital everything, these stories are going to become fewer and further between. It just sucks. Yeah. So you got that great story about how you got yourself a Peter Jackson autographed DVD. That's the coolest thing ever. Yeah, I think you've got to attach stories to whatever you do. Yeah. And that's what makes the product more interesting, I think, with the little stories. So next time we get together for one of these, I want to see that DVD. I will dig it out. Yep. I have, because we're not in the process of moving house, but we're hoping to once we find one. So a lot of my DVDs and Blu-rays and collectible stuff are all in storage tubs in the other room. But I will dig them out. I might even do a little YouTube video like I've been doing with some of my collectibles. Yeah. I'll do some signed ones. So I did do on the solo podcast that I do generally on Sunday night, I've started doing a little story at the end of them. So I did an Ingrid Pitt one, which with pictures, which was quite a fun story. I'll send you a little snippet of that if you want to watch that. Yeah. And I can't remember what the one I did last week was. It's been a long week. It's been like whole 6 days or so. but yeah, I enjoy sharing the stories. So. Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. And we enjoy this stuff, but we have so much history with these things themselves, and I think that's cool. Yep. So I have really enjoyed getting together and having this. Obviously, it's the longest we've ever spoke vocally because it's the first time, but we'll have to do this again whenever you choose to. And next thing you know, you'll be like, "Do you know what? I think my podcast needs to come back." Well, I'll tell you what. I had to dig out my microphone, and I attached it to my desk with the crazy long boom arm thing. So when we get off, I'm going to keep it attached. I'll wind up the cords and keep it ready to go. But in case you ever want to do this again, I will have the mic ready to go. Definitely. I will, anytime you ever think, "You know what, I want to podcast about something," just let me know. My schedule is so flexible, and we both enjoy talking. So absolutely, man. It was good to finally chat with you after 10 years of online chat, right? Exactly. Yeah. Will you enjoy your rest of your day? Because happy Canada Day, and my regards to Lydia as well. To keep up the amazing work with Dead Air, because I do enjoy listening to her and Wes talking. So I'll let her know. Good episodes. Thank you. All right, bud. All right. I'll talk to you soon, Stuart. Take care. Later. Bye.